Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another Rogues Chat. Today, I have Dr. Fahrenheit with me, a name that has been brought up on this show a few times. Some of you have been wondering who he is. Well, wonder no more, because he's here with me today. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, hello everyone. I'm Dr. Fahrenheit. Some of you may know me as AC1's strongest soldier. Today's podcast, I think, is the biggest AC1 fan in history and the biggest AC1 fan of today.
Yes.
I love doing analyses, writing on a bunch of different artistic media, but like my favorites are video games, and Assassin's Creed 1 happens to be my favorite video game, so that's why I write a lot about it.
Excellent. Yes, we will be talking very extensively about Assassin's Creed 1 today, which I'm personally very excited for. Feels like a special little gift just for me. How did you get into Assassin's Creed? It's the question everybody gets.
Assassin's Creed released when I was 7. Back then, I wasn't really aware of like I wasn't keeping up with the promotion or anything, so I didn't even know the game was the thing until suddenly it released, and through word of mouth and these other kids in my school, they're like, "Oh, have you played Assassin's Creed?" Or like, "Assassin's Creed is so awesome." I saw the cover, the guy in the hood and the blue color scheme. I was like, "Oh, that's really awesome!" And I wanted to play it. My parents saw the word assassin in the title, and they were like,
Mm,
"Oh, you're too young to play this."
hmm.
So what I did was I played the entire game at my friend's house through repeated visits. And
Wow.
his brother, he was kind of in charge of the games. His younger brother, who was my age, was allowed to play, and he was really lenient. He was like, "Yeah, you can play this." So I took advantage of that, and I played AC1, and that blew my mind at the time. It would be many. Then I didn't get the chance to play AC2 in 2009. When I finally turned 12, after a lot of begging, my parents were finally like, okay, fine, you can play Assassin's Creed. So I got the Ezio trilogy and, lined up with AC3 at the time, and I kind of played them back to back. AC1, I think, really stuck with me because I had like these gaps between visits, and I was just constantly thinking of, how I'd go about playing things in the game, which probably just cultivated like why I think about the game so much. After, I guess, that playthrough of like, AC2 to 3 and a few of the later games, like I think Syndicate was like where I really drew the line. Like I was kind of fatigued a bit by the series, and
Yeah.
I was focusing on a lot of other games I love, like immersive sims, Splinter, and other stealth games like Hitman, Splinter Cell, like a lot of other games basically. Just one day it kind of clicked to me. Like I was like trying to see like this overlap in design principles and things I really love, and it clicked to me like, one game that attempts a lot of these things across these other, like all these games, is AC1. And it really
Yeah.
synthesizes a lot of those concepts so well, like harmonizes. And then when I was 16 or 17, I want to say, I replayed the game for the first time, owning it. And I was like, okay, like I want to dive deep into it. And I saw just how brilliant it was. And I basically just started diving deeper and deeper. On the subject of AC content creation, like how I got into that, it's worth noting that I wasn't aware of any of the YouTubers and stuff like that. It was just during COVID that I started going online, and I came across Peter Stratford's channel and PD's channel, and they
Nice.
were both, yeah, they were both huge, huge inspirations for me. Both like, in terms of like seeing like, oh my God, these guys are doing these videos. I kind of want to do that too, right? And in addition to that, I got in contact with them, and they were very supportive, and like, they talked to me about the game and its design, and I was like, oh yeah, I really want to be part of this. All the content I've really made, I really owe to those two. It's really funny because both their names are Peter. That's kind of, I guess, my journey of how I got into AC and how I started doing content for it, and really haven't stopped, right? So yeah.
That's awesome. That's really cool. Yeah, I like both of them. Peter Stratford in particular is very inspiring to me as well. I'm thinking about maybe getting him for one of these if I can. That would be really cool. What I was gonna also mention is most of your content that you upload is being uploaded to Twitter primarily, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So one thing I was kind of like thinking about that is it would be great to bring more and more of your stuff over to YouTube because, not everyone has a Twitter account anymore.
Yeah.
People have been kind of leaving the site from time to time. Some of them just don't like the way it feels on there. Who can blame them, right?
Yeah, very understandable reasons.
Yeah. So Certainly, I think you will get a lot of appreciation. I think once you make your work like more available on YouTube, which I know you've been like slowly starting to do that, which is quite cool.
Yeah. So the reason why I kind of like just stuck like did Twitter to begin with was because like I got into content creation around the time I got into college, and my content creation before AC1, like before I came across both the Peter's channels, was Guilty Gear. So, and like fighting games, I think a lot of content pops up on Twitter because of
Yeah.
like the clip nature and all that. So I kind of got into that, and I also just stuck with Twitter because it's just a lot easier to manage, threads than video editing, and I didn't know how to video edit.
Hmm.
Now that I'm basically free from college, I've started taking up like, okay, I'm going to learn how to video edit using DaVinci Resolve and stuff like that, and I'm going to make these videos, start my YouTube channel, and eventually make my way to my dream mega analysis video essay I want to do on AC1. So like, yeah, the content will start opening up on YouTube, hopefully relatively soon. Yeah.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people would even just enjoy seeing the same little clips and even longer form videos that you put on Twitter simply just transferred over, without any fancy editing, right? Just like a simple trim
Yeah.
would be enough
Yeah.
because some of the routes you do are so good. Like they're actually crazy, and
Yeah.
I think it really
Thank you.
showcases.
Thank you.
You're welcome. It really showcases like what AC1 can do, and you see the game in a very different way than I think most people, which is very meaningful to me as well. But we will get to that. Other things that you like. You mentioned Guilty Gear. You also mentioned other stealth games. I don't know if you mentioned immersive sims briefly. Do you want to talk about fighting games and immersive sims and those kind of?
Yeah, yeah. So I guess we can start with Guilty Gear because I want to talk about Guilty Gear specifically because it has like a special place in my heart, especially for content creation. Because this was the first thing I ever did content creation for. It was like the first thing I wrote analyses for. It was the first thing I did videos for like combos and stuff. Hell, like I'd argue that Guilty Gear is single-handedly responsible for my awareness of the internet. Like
Ooh,
okay, like a bit of an exaggeration, but like
I get it
like I
though.
was never like an yeah, I was never like an online guy growing up, okay? And the thing is, I was into like I think when I was 16 was when I got into Guilty Gear, but the thing is, I wasn't playing the game so much because like I was just like a bit too intimidated by fighting games, and I had school and exams at the time. I was like, I can't sink too much time into this,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm a big metalhead, and I really, really, really loved the music and the metal mythos that it had, like the designs, the art, the even the lore I was reading. So I became like a fan in like all the other aspects. I basically listened to the OST like for 4 years before I actually started playing the game in
Wow.
2018, 2019. And then when I started playing, I was like, huh, I want to find people to fight. And like, cause I was playing like Plus R and XR, which were kind of like deadish games by then.
Mm-hmm.
And like they're not like the most popular. Like it was before rollback, right? They really were like Discord fighters. I went online. I was like, how to find people on Guilty Gear, and this was the first time in my life, Leo, that I opened Reddit. And
Oh man,
yeah, yeah, I
you
opened
were a
Reddit,
hero.
and then yeah, this is the first time I opened Reddit, and then through Reddit, I discovered for the first time in my life something I never heard of called Discord, and I was like, it was like join the Discord server, and I was like, huh, what's that? And I was like, okay, I have to make an account for this, and I get joined the Discord server. I was like, oh my god, there's so many people on here, and then I started seeing like, oh wow, these people are active on Twitter, and I had a
Ah,
Twitter account at
yes.
first, but I never used it. I had a Twitter account, but I never used it. Then I was like, all right, time to start using my Twitter account, and I started engaging with the community. There's also like lined up, I guess, around the time of like, because like 2018, 2019, I was getting into it, and this like gets into like 2020, right? Where I go into college, and COVID hits and everything. So when
Yeah.
COVID hit, I was isolated a lot, couldn't meet a lot of friends, and that's when I started like interacting with people online a lot more often. So like this sort of community thing and wanting to do content creation, talk to people online and all that started there. I think like the first thing that ever blew up for me for like writing stuff, it was both Guilty Gear and Megami Tensei stuff, like a bit of
Oh,
like my first big banger. Like I think I got like 1.8 thousand this thread on like the music theory of Potemkin and stuff. So yeah, that's kind of like my history with Guilty Gear.
so let me get this straight. Like, you're looking for people to play fighting games, Guilty Gear in particular, then Reddit, then Discord, then Twitter. Fighting games have brought us to places we wouldn't even go with a gun.
Fighting games have really changed me as a person.
Oh, I have no doubt.
like like really it's crazy. Guilty Gear really had a huge impact on my life and like the plus R community and stuff like that. Like I met a lot of wonderful people through it,
Hmm.
and I think I was doing some cool stuff for Saul for a while. I think I was like part of, like, I don't want to say I was the main proponent or anything like that. Like that definitely gets attributed to other players, but I was definitely like a part of the movement of like really showing like what you can do with plus or Sol. I feel in terms of like some of the key sidewinder stuff, at least on some scale, because like I know people were talking about it on Discord, and but there are like players who are definitely far better than I am, and like there's one person in particular, like this Gante is like this really amazing player, and they've gone like just off the charts with like combo theory with that character and stuff, like way beyond me. So yeah.
That's really cool. Yeah, I find that oftentimes, like, even seeing a player like that can give you the drive to do a lot of stuff yourself. So I think it's very, very valuable to have people like that.
Guilty Gear is all about the nature of progression, and like Saul's like actual weapon is like this fire seal relay torch that's like about passing the torch and stuff like that. So it's really awesome. Just that synthesis between the themes and the gameplay. So yeah.
The theme
And yeah, I
of
just
passing the torch and teaching each other, I think, is also something that is seen in Assassin's Creed as well.
100%. Like especially when we get into like the ideological talking about how AC1 tackles the Assassin's Creed, like addressing stuff like genealogy.
Demon Souls. I do want to bring that up because this is another game that you and I love dearly and have a lot in common. What do you think of that game? How do you say whatever you want to say about Demon Souls, basically, and why it's so awesome? Because it's
So
my favorite game in the
I,
series.
yeah, same here. In fact, for me, I think like for the seventh generation of console video games, my favorite Western game is Assassin's Creed One, and my favorite Eastern game is Demon Souls. Basically,
Hmm.
I think that both these games were really important to like changing the landscape of the game of games for better or worse. And I think that like they both of these were like kind of like titans that like really reinvented what a video game could be, especially with like traditional like when you see the legacy of the games that they kind of carry over the narratives of, like obviously like with AC it's like stealth action games, open world games, even immersive sims to a degree and stuff like that, so on and so forth. With Demon Souls you can really see that sort of RPG nature, like obviously King's Field and stuff like reinvented for this new generation. And for just to note, I've never played a Zelda game. I need to actually get into that, but like I know of its like Zelda like inspirations, at least with like how you journey through these levels and stuff like that. I really felt that like when you look at this sort of action RPG game, it was really like I really loved how it just reinvented action RPGs for that generation of consoles. And additionally, I think there's all these sort of innovative narratives that Miyazaki brought in, right? And we'll probably talk about this more extensively later, but like basically I see games as a dialogue, and I see games as this sort of like language between the player and the developer, and I think a toy to a degree. When you look at Demon Souls and the sort of like ethos it has with these ideas Miyazaki put into it, like for example Miyazaki's experience, like how he'd read Western fantasy books and novels, but he didn't understand them fully, so he had to fill in the blanks for them. Like you can see how that sort of nature of a story told, but it being incomplete to him and filling in the blanks is a dialogue, and he
Yeah,
translates
yeah.
that dialogue-based nature into the video game, right? And like in multiple ways. One is like the sort of story with gaps in it for you to actually fill in the pieces, how you can shape your character to experience this journey and like kind of co-author the game, right? All these sorts of things. And for Demon Souls in particular, I just think that the design of that game is most robust for like the core things that make the Souls games really unique, because it really is the first game, so like it's truest to the fundamentals, right?
Yeah.
And I really love, if you see that game's combat system, it's very simplistic, but the thing that's actually its greatest advantage is that it is specifically simplistic and can thus be utilized in so many different scenarios, which is why like all the bosses are so varied and very gimmicky and all that, including all the worlds, because this simplistic combat system can jump in between like, these different sorts of levels and such.
It stays functional,
And
like
on
no
top,
matter what context you put it in. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And it never really, I don't think Demon Souls ever, okay, like Demon Souls probably slightly runs into trouble with Dragon God, but like I don't even think like I don't think Dragon God is the same as like Bed of Chaos, because like in Dark Souls with Bed of Chaos, the game kind of has like this, like a bit of like a platforming element, but like that game's like mechanics are not built around that at all.
Yeah.
And like you have that like in a mission, whereas like Demon Souls, even though you have like a stealthish mission with Dragon God, I don't think it's like something like the degree to what you're doing stealth in is in the confines of the mechanics and systems. It's just that it's not really the greatest use of its mechanics and systems, and it kind of becomes a lackluster low point of the game.
Yeah.
But other than that, like I think, generally the game really manages to bring out like so many different elements. Like you go to Stonefang and suddenly you have like all these enemies with like hided skin on them. So like, oh wow, slashing attacks don't do much damage, but if you have a piercing weapon, oh boy, like
Yeah, you're gonna eat those guys alive. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And likewise, then you go to Latria, and like Latria is kind of like got this survival horror-ish elements, because it's the one place where you, I think, barely find healing items, basically like the grasses and stuff like that, because
Yeah.
basically the
It's a prison.
it's a prison, and essentially the different worlds have a focus on different like things you can find, like Bolatar is where you find most of the grasses,
Yep.
Stonefang the like the stones and like upgrade materials. So, like yeah, with Latria it's like that. And basically, so in Latria, one, you have that vulnerability, but in addition to that, you also have like something like with the mind flayers. Like I mean, when you know how to beat them, you can like like roll past their attacks and beat them. But there's a lot of thought gone into like funneling you into like really claustrophobic spaces with them, so
Yeah.
that you're more prone to fuck up, right? And with that in mind, you have this really interesting approach to level design. Like, for example, there's this one point in the game specifically, again, the level specifically for Latria 1, there's this walkway and there's an opening beneath. And if you fall, like, you have to go down it to fall onto another walkway, a mind flayer on that walkway. So if you fall down there and he's there, he'll attack you and probably catch you. On the other hand, something you can do is, if you don't get triggered by him as he's walking before he turns around or notices you, you can hide in one of the cells. The cells
Yeah.
become hiding spots, right? And you can wait for him to pass. But it's still very tricky because like of how fast his patrol is and everything. And what's really interesting, especially, is that there are like these like they're prisoners inside the cells, and the prisoners don't really harm you, but um if you attack them, you can alert the guy outside, right? So it's like kind of just like a little like patience like test, right? Like you don't harm them so that the mind flayer outside doesn't detect you.
Yeah.
And when he passes, you just leave. On the other hand, if you do get detected by him, those enemies are just going to add to the claustrophobia and the claustrophobic space, because they give you less room to move,
Yeah.
and they are designed to block your way, like because they really are designed not to attack you, but block. They're kind of like the beggars from AC1.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it's really funny. It's really funny, but they kind of are like the beggars from AC1. So you do stuff like that, and basically you just have this really interesting design with how all the levels bring out these interesting concepts in the game. And I also like how, I think the game is really built around different classes. It's been a while since
Yes.
I've tried it, so I want to try it again and then double check. But like, something like Tower Knight, a lot of people know, like Tower Knight and Adjudicator, like a lot of people know that, or you melee their weak spot, wait for them to fall, you go for their weak point, right? Like the head, basically.
Hmm.
Another thing you can actually do is you can, because their stages have a sense of verticality to them, so you can actually go on the higher levels and you can use something like a bow or a spell to directly target their head, right?
Yeah, I killed
And you can just
Adjudicator
really
by
on.
using a bow and just shooting at the bird.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, right? And what's really cool is that like they also have different move sets from that, right? Like even
Hmm.
on the higher levels, Adjudicator uses tongue, which is actually harder to deal with than
It is harder.
the blade. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's like a harder and more engaging fight that way.
it's so
And
cool.
yeah, and you have stuff like this, like even something like the Armored Spider, who is like a really underrated boss in my opinion. Like I like the tunnel you're in, and like generally, like yeah, the melee ability to go closer and attack him. And when you're closer, you have to deal with the melee attacks plus like you have to deal with the webs. Whereas like if you're an archer or a range build like an archer or a mage, you can space yourself out well and like you can time your dodges better and stuff like that, right? And
Hmm.
this isn't even bringing in stuff like the customization with like the different rings and so on and so forth. Like like Tiefling against the blind hero and sorry, old hero, even very useful against like the mind flayers I mentioned earlier with that sneaking around and stuff.
Yeah.
So I really love Demon Souls for stuff like that and how it all even ludonarratively ties into the concepts of the game and its exploration of the old one, like granting this like the soul arts to the world, but the old one isn't really something that's evil. It's just that the corrupted nature of man is what brings out this sort of dark manifestation of the soul arts.
It's
I
something
really love
humanity
how
is
it
prone to
ties.
misusing.
Yeah, yeah. And I also think that this was like one of the games that had like an interesting fail state. I actually want to talk about this for AC1 a bit as well, but like we'll get to that later. But like I think this game has an interesting fail state and that like you die, you don't just die, right? Like if you think about it, the Souls games are kind of more forgiving than like let's say a game where you die and you really do lose all your progress.
Yeah.
Like here you have like a chance to get your stuff back, right?
Yeah.
And you do have the knowledge and like you just have to conquer and then move forward. I think that this narrative is really interesting because it really does have the whole will to go on, will to live, like sort of narrative. And then when you die, like and you're gone entirely, like let's say you give up at the game, right? You're done with Demon Souls, you're done with Dark Souls, you're never picking this game up again. That's the moment you turn into a Black Phantom or you
Yes.
hollow. In addition to that, I also really like how the context of death isn't trivial because it's not just about you. Someone will see your blood stain, right? One thing that I don't really see brought up, which I think is pretty cool, and it might sound a bit cruel of me, but I like something I think is interesting is that since every player is on a level playing field, you kind of get to see who made it through and who died, right? You get
Yes.
to see those phantoms, you get to see who left the notes, you get to see the blood stains, right?
Yeah.
I think that every bloodstain that exists in the game is not trivial like that. Like, and in that sort of sense, I think everyone having the same experience with the difficulty is like really valuable because it causes more deaths. It's connected to someone else, and that's like an artistic thing that I can't really think of that's applied somewhere else.
Yeah, like
Yes,
for
sir.
me, in terms of Demon Souls, this is something I think about very often is that, like, a player like me who dies very infrequently in Demon Souls is less helpful to others because I generate fewer bloodstains.
Yeah,
And it's something that I think about very often, and it's like, it makes me want to write more notes down because those are kind of like the two ways you can learn. You can be shown this is what works, or you can be shown this is what doesn't work. The game is kind of like kind in a way because if you do something that doesn't work, it will generate a bloodstain for you, right? So like you don't have
yeah,
to
no,
worry about
I
it so
agree.
much. But if you want to convey something that does work, writing notes in these games is something that becomes one of the only ways you can actually convey some kind of useful information. Within the diegesis, like if you're not just going online and
Yeah.
like typing stuff on forums or whatever.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think that's like a really special thing about souls that should be maintained. I don't mind like I'm less offended by the idea of like, oh, you can pause the game when you're in offline mode. Like I've seen a lot of people propose that. Like I don't mind that. But like I really do love this online component. Everyone is on a level playing field, even if you're playing the game on your own, right? And
Yeah.
even just stuff like even stuff like co-op and like PvP and its entire context put into the game is awesome. And obviously the games have like, iterated on that. But yeah, like I think in combination with the stuff I said that was unique to Demon Souls is like a very special experience for me. But of course, like I think the Souls games are generally quite good. Like it's like a cool series to stick with. I find myself really interested in Dark Souls 2 lately because that game I played at launch, but I haven't like touched ever since. I remember liking it at the time, but ever since then I've seen that game's had like so much discourse about like well
Everything.
uh, like I mean you have like H bomb and Mauler which like created this whole schism. I mean, I guess the origin would be Matthew Matosis because of his video, but then you had like H Bomber guy and Mahler and like these like I think you could almost call them factions at this point on the internet, like for like whether Dark Souls 2 is a good or bad game.
Right.
And but the thing is like everything I see about the game from the people who are fans about it really really interests me, and I do want to like have another crack at it and kind of like because I'm like when I played the game, I played it like I played it very straightforwardly and like I beat it and I had fun, but I'm pretty sure there's there's potential for it to become a game I really love. So I want to give
Yeah.
it another shot again and like I want to give it another shot again and I want to like just check out these things that I've missed along the way.
I have some fun
There's just
things.
so many cool details.
Yeah, like I have some fun things that I can say about DS2. Like it's really interesting like when you play it again, um in a few ways it feels a little bit like a successor to Demon Souls because it rewards you for engaging with its world in very similar ways. Like, if you play like you're an adventurer trying to survive, then Dark Souls 2 is not a very challenging game by any means. It can be humorous. It can try to like rage bait you and try to annoy you and try to troll you. DS2 certainly tries to troll you more than most of the series. And I think that how you react to being trolled by a game is kind of like what defines a lot of how you feel about it because it is very janky and it is a little bit stiff to play and it is a little bit clunky. Like all of that stuff is true. If you're not adamant on engaging with it like quote unquote honestly, like a guy with a sword and shield and that's all you're doing and you don't like use any of your inventory, the
Yeah.
game is fine. Like it's not that hard by any means. Like, carry a bow, right? Like carry like a catalyst, right? Like it's fine. Like use whatever you have, throw some fire bombs, right? Like it's one of those games where if you do engage with it, I assume like when you played Demon Souls, like you did interact with as much of the game systems as you felt
Like
comfortable doing, right?
yeah. Yeah.
And it's like if you play DS2 in this way, it's not really gonna kill you very often at all. It's honestly like pretty easy as long as you use what you have and manage your resources well. But it is a game that punishes you severely for ignoring its systems in a way that the rest of the series does not, basically. And I think that this is the most controversial element about it, which I understand. People are used to the kind of comfort and the sort of laissez faire vibe of the rest of the games, but DS2 doesn't really like allow you to do that. Like it wants you to use what it gives you. And if you do, it's pretty easy.
If Demon Souls is your favorite, like after that, how does it sort of rank for you?
That's really hard. I think Demon Souls is very innovative and it does a lot of it's a trailblazer, right? It does a lot of unique things that some of the games also do, but a lot of the games don't even try to do anymore, and that's part of the reason why I like it so much. But then after Demon Souls, it's like, okay, each of these games kind of excels in different ways. And it's very difficult for me to, rank them straight up. But if I had to say my favorite games, like in my number 2 spot after Demon Souls, It would probably be Bloodborne, Dark Souls 3, and Night Rain, all sharing, like, all tied for number 2. I really like all three of those.
Interesting.
And then after that, like, the rest of them share, like, slot 3.
Yeah. I would have imagined slot 2 would have been something like between Dark Souls 1 and 2, just because it's like I think the closest to Demon Souls from what I remember. But like, yeah, that's pretty cool to hear.
They are pretty close to Demon Souls, but the thing with that is that I already have Demon Souls, right? Let's talk about Assassin's Creed.
Gotcha.
Let's talk about the concept of Assassin's Creed.
Before I just talk about the concept, I think like just open with like my motivation for talking about it. And it's something that I intend to write about more concretely in the future. But basically, I feel that like when you look at Assassin's Creed, like I've seen a lot of times online people kind of debating about what Assassin's Creed is, like because this franchise is so long going, like it's been going on for so long. What is the identity of the series? What should be in Assassin's Creed or not? Because like some people are fed up with the idea that like oh this just like they're taking random points in history and calling it Assassin's Creed. Some people are like fine with it because they think it's really flexible, and they're like these a lot of different arguments, right? Some people will argue, like I said, that it can just be any sort of anti-dogmatic, anti-fascist story set in history. Some would argue that it's about the assassin fantasy, which like I think some people like people have even debated what the assassin fantasy is, and I think that's an important component. But like, there's a lot more nuance to dive into what the assassin fantasy is. But so like you have that. Then I think some people would argue the tech, right? Like some people think like, oh, the first four games are AC because of like how they play it and stuff like that. And then like after that, it's like been straying away from AC. Some would argue the Desmond era, right? So AC1 to AC3, and then like from there onwards, it's not like there's just so much out there. And I personally think that as far as a core identity goes, it's a mix of things together. Like Assassin's Creed as a franchise has commented on a multitude of parameters, but the only games in the series which comment on all of them, at least from the ones I've played, because I played, just for context to the listener, I've played up until Syndicate. I have not played the RPG games. I have not played Shadows or Mirage. Um, I'm kind of just not really interested in getting back into AC. I'm just more like an old school guy. But so yeah, just for that context, from the games I've played, the only ones that touch on all the parameters are AC1 and 2.
Yeah.
And this was back when it was following the vision of Patrice Désilets, who, if you didn't know, dear listener, his vision for Assassin's Creed was to make a trilogy of games. It wasn't supposed to be this long running series. After AC1 and AC2, we were supposed to get Desmond's AC3 in the modern world, Brotherhood Revelations, and the AC3 we got weren't a thing. They kind of came as an offshoot of Ubisoft wanting this franchise to go on, basically. And that's kind of why one of the reasons why Patrice Désilets left mid development of Brotherhood. Yeah, it was a very different vision with AC1 and 2 under him. And one of the most fundamental things about AC1 and 2 that no other AC game gets, right? Like none of the future AC games get. And this is like the core, most paramount thing to the identity of Assassin's Creed that no one talks about. More than the Assassin fantasy, more than the history, more than anything else. That is its commentary on the medium of video games.
Yeah.
And how it ties the Assassin's Creed to that, basically. Now I'll give like the identity and the history of Assassin's Creed, right? So basically after the success of Prince of Persia Sands of Time, Ubisoft, like like the next generation of consoles was coming soon, right?
Yeah.
So Ubisoft wanted, like they wanted to dictate the market. They wanted a game that would redefine action adventure games for the seventh generation. Like that was the mandate. It had to redefine like what games could do on the seventh gen, and it had to be stuff that could only be done um from leveraging the new technology that era of gaming was ushering in. It had to be something to truly change the landscape of gaming. That was the foundational mandate. And back then they were thinking of doing it with Prince of Persia, right? Like to make a Prince of Persia that you can basically choose your own path with rather than being restrained to a single these linear sort of paths and level design. They wanted something more open. So they got the Sands of Time team to work on it. Patrice Desilets heads the team. He was researching a bunch of stuff. Like he already had ideas of things he could achieve in Sands of Time, like a lot of NPCs on the screen, having them be a dynamic part of the game, having like jumping across rooftops basically and movement like that. Those were things that like he wanted for Sands of Time but couldn't achieve. So he wanted to do that with Assassin's Creed. The way Assassin's Creed was conceived was when he was reading about secret societies and he read that sort of motto attributed to the Nazari Ismailis that nothing is true and everything is permitted. Now, just a little like disclaimer here that historically there's a lot of debate as to whether the Nazari Ismailis actually said that or it's just a motto attributed with them because most of the citations come from the West. Either way, it is at least tied to their mythos, like the myth of the assassins and all that stuff. When Patrice Desilets read this, the nothing is true and everything is permitted, he basically, like, what struck him was like, this creed defines what video games are about. Like, this is what video games are about. And so he wanted to make a game based off these, like, this group of people, because he felt that a game is like the perfect medium for it, the perfect platform for it. And this creed would be something that would showcase what gaming is capable of. Patrice has always believed, as game devs, they make rules, but players always break said rules, right?
Yeah.
And when you look at the whole nothing is true and everything is permitted, that's kind of what the motto is about. It's like about breaking those rules and that freedom that comes with it. But it's also about the understanding and respect of those rules, right? Like to understand it so that you may break it and evolve and create new rules, right? And that's kind of what Assassin's Creed kind of is founded on. And that's when you see a lot of these concepts that really do drive home the concept of the medium. Like that it's because of the fact that AC1 is a commentary on video games that the core theme of it is about harmony. But the biggest bit of harmony is between the player and the developer, essentially. This is where this concept of games as a dialogue comes in, and this is not something exclusive to like Patrice Desilets believes that games are a dialogue. This is not exclusive to him. Like obviously, like earlier, I kind of brought up the Miyazaki sort of example of it, but like even devs like Warren Spector of Deus Ex fame and his work on at Origin and Looking Glass and Storm. He's a big proponent of the whole games are a dialogue, like games are toys philosophy for like players to really co-author a story, really to have co-authorship over an experience with a developer. Patrice believes in this. He has deep understanding and appreciation of the medium. He doesn't have a formal history of it, which is really interesting because
Yeah.
if you look at someone like Warren Spector, that guy comes from tabletop RPGs and
Yep.
making like RPGs at Origin, and then like going like he has a formal history and he understands the medium.
Like immersive sims have a lot of tabletop DNA in them.
Oh yeah, 100%, 100%. And I'd say that AC has immersive sim DNA in it, and like AC1 specifically, even a bit of AC2, but mostly AC1. And basically, when you see this whole sort of thing, right? Like with Patrice, what's interesting. So like I said, with Miyazaki, he managed to introduce that nature of a dialogue through his experience with Western fantasy books, right? With Patrice, he has a film background, but unlike a lot of people in the industry who kind of want to make games derivative of film and stuff like that, Patrice isn't like that. He wanted to see how you could use dialogue based behaviors you can find in film and translate it into a video game. One thing in particular that struck him was Stanislavski's theory of acting, where basically you have to use your whole body to emote the performance, right? That really carry it forward. And it's through this concept that basically Patrice Desilets came up with the puppeteer system, right? Because now the player has agency over the character's entire body, right? You're really puppeteering each of the parts of him. And now, with this concept of puppeteering and controlling each part, comes the concept of harmonizing with them, of synchronization, right? And you can see how, synchronization, that's what Desmond has to do in the Animus, right? AC1's whole Animus thing is synchronization with Desmond and Altair and stuff like that. And like you have this sort of like synthesis between them, that harmony, right? And likewise with this concept of harmony, what do the assassins fight for? Peace in all things, right? And the game is like all about meditation and has all these meditative principles and stuff like that, right? It's a game of the mind, AC1. And so when you have this sort of thing, and with what Patrice Desilets did with um, the puppeteer system, is he took his film background to treat the player like an actor
Right.
in this set of a game. And that's how he drives the dialogue-based nature of video games forward, right? Like Warren Spector's his history comes from tabletop RPGs, the dialogue between them. Miyazaki, the dialogue in literature in his own unique way, right? On things lost in translation. Patrice, it comes from the dialogue he recognized in film. And so this is kind of like where it comes in, this sort of harmony between the player and the developer. And that's why the player in AC1 has as much agency as they do. Like Patrice even described it as like really like the player makes the game along with the developer, that co-authorship sort of thing. And you can see like just how much you can take, like, assassinations into like so many directions, like how you can really just manipulate this game and really bend it like in all directions, like a toy and its joints and stuff like that. So this is kind of like the foundational basis upon which Assassin's Creed is born from. And again, like, with the puppeteer system, you can just see things you have to harmonize with. Like, for example, Altair can only use eagle vision from benches as far as the hiding spots go, because, like, that's the only one where his head is free, right? When Altair is on a non-standing object where his arms are being used as counterbalances, he can't throw knives because his arms are currently occupied with an action, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so just like Altair can only eject when his feet are attached to a surface, right? Like, another thing about the game and its concept of harmony is that the development process kind of bled into the game. And this is something Corey May talks about. Like, he talks about how a lot of times when game devs are like really, really working on a project and they're so committed, the essence of how the project was made bleeds into the final product, like both consciously and subconsciously. AC1 went through a bunch of iterations. Like, obviously, it starting as a Prince of Persia game.
Yep.
It didn't just start as a Prince of Persia game. It started as a co-op Prince of Persia
Yep.
game,
Yep.
right? And it ended up being what it is. It went through a lot of cycles of development process, and you can see how that cyclic nature makes it into the game. What people don't really understand is your journey across the cities of Damascus, Acre, and Jerusalem. Are you traveling through cycles of life, death, and rebirth? Because it captures the ethos and culture of all those cities at the time. Damascus was never conquered and was lively because it was the economic hub of the Levant, which is why its entrance is just filled with a bunch of NPCs at market stalls they're clustered at, right? Like, it really shows the liveliness as thriving, but also the pride of Damascus since it wasn't conquered during the Third Crusade. Acre, on the other hand, is like it was just reinvaded by the Crusaders and became the Crusader capital of the Levant. And so, like, you see the death of a culture, with the Christian culture being brought to replace the Islamic culture, and all the corpses everywhere, and just death and fear, like really like reign throughout Acre. And Jerusalem is the place of rebirth and faith, like, because, like, one is reclaimed by the Saracens, but also it's a synthesis between both Islamic, like, it's a synthesis of the different faiths you see in Jerusalem. And that's why there's also like a heavy vegetation in Jerusalem, why you see like a lot of like greens and cemeteries specifically. You can see like how in the front, like at the entrance, there's a cemetery, and you can see the sort of cycle, right? Like, you see lively people at market stalls in Damascus, you see corpses in Acre, and then you see the grave, right? And the grave, the cemetery is the rebirth because their bodies have, their nutrients have returned to the soil, right? Like, you're kind of like one with earth once again, and you've brought new life, right? And that's why Jerusalem's the only place with cemeteries across the entire game. Just a little side note before I continue, I just want to say, like, of all the AC1 criticisms I've heard, the worst one, the actual worst one, like, it's completely like really, really bad, is that the cities have no variety. And as the biggest cap, its variety can rival the later games. It's much more specific, like much more specific and localized to the city environments, like the architectural stuff. But what it does with them is so varied and very specific, even with limited assets compared to like AC2. But yeah, just getting back to the actual topic at hand, I bring up this cycles of life, death, and rebirth because then it's also followed by meditation and transcendence, and you can see how this is a very like this meditative process all comes back into the concept of harmony, and this is what the game is really all about. And beginning to end, this is what we see in the game, and simultaneously with that cyclic nature, the game frames narrative structure through how like its fundamental like its fundamental mechanical structure, which is game loop, right? Like the game's narrative structure is cyclical because of the nature of video games being cyclic. Like
Yeah.
video games are about going through these sorts of like cyclic spirals in a sort of sense where like that's just the nature of game loop, right? And Korime even spoke of how with the history of game design, like he acknowledged the sort of narrative of how like when games like older games kind of like had the structure of you kind of play a mission and then you're rewarded with story. And he also wanted to like how that's like a traditional design, and an idea he had for future design was how to sort of interweave the story and the gameplay happening at the same time. And you can see that AC1 and 2 are artistic attempts at both approaches. Like AC1 embraces the traditional design, but instead of just embracing it for the sake of convenience, like a lot of other games do, molds an artistic narrative from it, right? Because now this game loop sort of nature and the cyclic nature really ties into this whole, cycles of life, death, and rebirth, and finding harmony and transcendence in the game. When they did that and closed the chapter on that for AC1, in AC2, they actually attempted like this idea that Corey May had, that the future of games is trying to synthesize having storytelling and gameplay happen at the same time, which is why you see like a lot of this, like these story beats in the moment, and why you even have stuff like in AC1, I say history is a backdrop which informs the narrative and story you're playing. Whereas AC2, there's a lot of times you just play out the historical event. But then, like, let's go to AC2, right? So then, if AC1 comments on the medium, like, what does AC2 comment on? AC2 comments on video game sequels.
Yeah.
Like it's not right, and that's why the game is about legacy. Like if you look at its core theme, it's all about legacy. That's why Ezio's family is a huge thing. Ezio is inheriting the legacy of his family, and not just his family, but the assassins. There's a reason why he seeks Altair's codex pages, gets his armor and sword. Like he's continuing Altair's legacy. As the times have gone on, you can see that things are evolving and changing in terms of their beliefs. You can also see just how complementary these two games are, and it's really on a fundamental level, like the existence or lack thereof of a day-night cycle. Like AC1, everything is always during the day because time is stagnant. You're kind of jumping between pockets of time, and that's why you kind of like, have like fast forwarding memory and such like that. We'll get into that more when we talk about AC1's like more mechanical design and stuff like that. But you can see that sort of framework there, and like how like in terms of that, like connecting everything together in a frozen moment of time, that resonates with the concept of harmony. AC2, on the other hand, time is always moving forward. That's why you have a day and night
Yeah.
cycle, and that's why mechanically they incorporated the fact that at night there's less NPCs than a day. You have like this day and night cycle, and it's because time keeps marching on. It's the movement, it's going forward, right? Even the locations are very thoughtful because the Holy Land during the Third Crusade, it's a like it's set during this war that's motivated by, it's a holy war, right? Like it's motivated by faith. It's in the context of a war that you fight for peace, right? That's where the whole fighting for peace and all the things really thrives, right? That concept. You can see that's like how that setting is the perfect landscape for its concept of peace and harmony. Whereas like AC2 is in the Renaissance. The Renaissance is quite literally the revival,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And that's why like the legacy is continued, and not just that, like not only is the legacy continued, it's continued very, very smartly, not just because it's a Renaissance and revival, but it actually connects to the mythology of the Nizari Ismailis and like the assassins, right? Because Marco Polo was the one who spread their myth, and like the game kind of canonizes spreading. I think it was like the Codex pages or something along the lines of that, like helping like bring that sort of culture to Italy. You can see like how the historical narrative is still very strong. Like even though now we're adapting, like in AC1 we're adapting those assassins directly, AC2 adapts these assassins in Italy, but there is like a sort of basis for it. There's like a really a strong basis for it rather than just having assassins randomly on any part of the planet. You can just see these concepts of legacy really permeate throughout the game. The pieces of Eden, right? In AC1, it's the apple of Eden, which is the fruit of knowledge, right? And again, again with this whole concept of harmony. Uh, if you remember at the beginning of the game, the game gives you the quote from Ecclesiastes about the pursuit of knowledge being a chasing after the wind, right?
Yeah.
Because uh,
For in much wisdom is much grief, right?
yeah, and in much grief is sorrow, right? And basically, uh, this is really relevant to AC1 because the concept of harmony resonates a lot with truth, right?
Yeah.
Like the truth brings harmony, right? Like finding your true self, the true nature of the world, right? But the thing is, what happens when the truth is an illusion, right? That's what makes the war for peace something that's really never ending, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like the sort of paradox there, and you can see that's the thing about Assassin's Creed One, right? The apple of Eden. It's this place, like it's this source of knowledge and truth to demystify the illusions of the world, but really, it's the source of illusions, right? It reveals truths, but it just brings more questions. It brings about more illusions, right? And this is like the game really frames the concept of Ecclesiastes very well because it's the whole chasing after the wind. In the actual Ecclesiastes, I think it's more so framed like mist, and like when you grab at mist, like it vanishes from your hand, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's actually why like AC1 has like a mist like presentation with the animus effects and
I
stuff.
love AC1's
So
foggy vibe, makes me so happy.
how does AC2 like counter like the apple? Well, in AC2, you're not after an artifact per se. You're after the vault.
Yeah.
What is a vault if not like a bank where one's legacy like it's a bank, right? Like a like the vault
It's
is the
storage.
bank. And
Yeah.
yeah, and it's where you can find one's inheritance, the concept of legacy. Also, almost forgot, but like that because AC2 is about the concept of legacy, that's why the animus shifts from the concept of synchronization to that of the bleeding effect,
Yeah.
right? And here you can also see another shift, right? AC1 was more psychological and about the mind and spiritual and like in the soul and everything. AC2 is physiological and about about the body and blood. That's why like the color scheme of AC1, it's like whites and blues, kind of like to mimic the sky and the mind. Whereas in AC2, it's like reds, right? Because like it's about blood and the bleeding effect. And it's this
Its tagline is
reason
literally
why.
truth is written in blood, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And like another thing about AC2 is like, the animus effect turns into these grid lines because they're like architectural structure, right? They're like the skeleton, like
Mm-hmm.
the body is forming, right?
Yeah.
And Altair is Altair ibn La Ahad, meaning the son of no one, because he has no allegiance to anyone and therefore he's free of mind. Ezio is Auditore da Firenze, where like da Firenze, his legacy, right, like coming from Firenze, but also Auditore because of the fact that he is an auditor, right, and he is quite literally going to pass Desmond's legacy onto him, right, like I mean, sorry, his legacy onto Desmond, right, like especially with the ending when Minerva talks to him and like quite literally uses him as a vessel to communicate to Desmond. So you can basically just see like and like yeah, like I think I've given like a sort of clear fundamental like breakdown on like Assassin's Creed was like where like it was touching upon all these sorts of like different disciplines and domains. Like when you get to Brotherhood, like it's very thoughtful in terms of like the parameters it's touching on. Like for example, it's about forming the assassin brotherhood, and it's set in Rome because Rome wasn't built in a day, which is why like the reformation of Rome and the building of your assassin brotherhood takes time, right? Like it's something that you don't do in a day. You do it through the sequence of the events. So like it takes that saying that Rome wasn't built in a day and like it mechanizes it through how you build the Roman assassin brotherhood. So that's like a really smart and cool thing. But it's from Brotherhood immediately that you start seeing like, okay, now the animus is framed that like as such that like kind of like redoing a bit of AC1 where like okay, we need to find something in Ezio's memories, but Ezio has suffered this trauma, and because of that he doesn't have the confidence to get to the actual memories, so like you have to like go through the whole sequence again. It's similar to what happens with Desmond and Altair in AC1. Like Desmond can't access the target memory because his mind doesn't have the confidence to yet, and he has to like kind of go through each of the memories bit by bit to unravel and demystify um, a lot of what he saw in that target memory. So you have that concept, but now here's the thing. Even though this is like a cool concept and it ties into how the game mechanically works, where's the commentary on video games? It's kind of dead now, right? Like
Yeah.
it's not there anymore because this wasn't the plan. This wasn't how it was set up. AC1, like AC was really specifically set up as a trilogy with AC1 and 2. Like Altair and Ezio were going to be the synthesis for Desmond's third game, which was going to be like it was going to learn from both the previous games and combine features of both those, which really like dude, like just saying that out loud, like really breaks my heart because like man, that would
Yeah.
be amazing. What would AC3 have been in terms of the commentary of video games, right? It's the ending of a video game series, right? That's what it was about, video game endings. That's why the Armageddon was being set up. Desmond's whole thing was going to be trying to stop the world from ending. And if you don't know, like Patrice actually revealed it now, but like basically the world does end, and like it was going to end in AC3, and Desmond and Lucy were going to survive and be like kind of like the new Adam and Eve, like starting a new beginning, which is kind of like what the concept of an ending is, right? The end of something is the beginning of something else and something new,
Hmm.
right? It's like you can see that like over there, like oh yeah, the Animus has outlived its usefulness by AC2, at least to comment on all the parameters, right?
Yeah.
But since this franchise keeps going on, it keeps going back to it, and like we don't really have any of these commentaries on the medium anymore. Like already from Brotherhood onwards, that severance is there basically. One thing I've always liked to imagine, AC has always had the diegetic UI and stuff like that.
Hmm.
I always like to wonder how AC3 would have handled this UI outside the Animus. My interpretation and feeling is that the entire game would be framed through the apple of Eden through Altair's last gaze in it.
All
We'd be
like
looking at
gold,
Altair
right?
sort of yeah, yeah, yeah. But like not just that, but like like before he dies, he takes like a last gaze at it, and like basically instead of being in the Animus, we'd have his vision of the apple of Eden, and like like that's how you could frame it.
Right, like looking
Yeah,
forward,
look and
and what he like
yeah,
Desmond's journey
yeah.
is what Altair is seeing, basically.
Yeah, yeah, and also I think it would really like harmonize with the concept, right, of like the ending, where like when the world ends, it's a new beginning, right? So look into the future, and Altair is quite
Mm.
literally looking into the future. So
Hmm.
like I I I think that would really synthesize, and
I like that.
part of me suspects like this part I can't prove. I cannot prove this. Like everything up until now, I could prove, but this apple of Eden thing, this is just like something I'm proposing, but part of me feels that might have been the plan because when you look at like Altair's codex pages and everything and how it ends, it's like he's argued a lot of stuff, but the last codex specifically is him sort of like like
What harm
like
is
on his
there
own, where
in
he's kind
one
of like
last look, right?
yeah, but not just what harm is there in one last look, but before that, he kind of questions his place in the universe and like kind of like that everything was insignificant, that no matter what he did, like not like everything he did it probably hasn't brought any substantial change, right? But the thing that's really beautiful is that when Ezio is reading it in the context of AC2, you know that that's not true because
Mm.
of the fact that what the change that he has brought to people like Ezio and the Italian branch of the assassins, as well as like like Desmond and such. And so what's really great is that like I think that through the Apple, like through the Apple basically, um Altair would see Desmond, right? Like he would see Desmond and Ezio and how he learned, like how he was able to relive Altair's memories and how Ezio was able to read his codex pages and what the Assassin Brotherhood would evolve into and Desmond's final journey. And I think in that, like through playing the game, it would sort of like reinstill Altair with faith just before he died. This is just how I feel like I mean I think it would be really awesome if that happened. I also feel that's kind of how it's set up. Like that's like just kind of like it just looks like it's so lined up so well. That's kind of what I feel. But that I absolutely cannot confirm. Like that bit there, I like that's like just speculation on my bit, like on my part, and like kind of like theorizing. With this, I think you can sort of see like this was the kind of like initial scope and identity of Assassin's Creed. So to me, I think that Assassin's Creed has been losing its identity since Brotherhood onwards. Like for me
That makes
personally,
sense
like
to me
I'm mostly
because around Brotherhood and onward is the time when most of my friends, even like non AC superfans, like just normie gamers, started to step away from the series, started to be less interested in it. And that coinciding with the time when it started to kind of very noticeably, if slightly, start stepping away from itself, that makes a lot of sense to me. Because people would have been able to like intuitively feel that, and then they started to become less and less interested in keeping up with every purchase, right?
I joined Ian Exo4's Discord server like around the time I started getting into AC content because like that's when I discovered his channel. Uh, I was just looking for his mentions of AC, and he was saying that like how oh yeah the franchise peaked with AC 1 and 2 and then went downhill from Brotherhood
He's
onwards.
right. Like,
So yeah, yeah, he is
are you gonna
right. So he's
are people really gonna argue with the guy who made the bleeding effect expert gameplay in Assassin's Creed?
I think people will unfortunately, but they are wrong. But yeah, yeah, Ian XO4, what a legend. It was really great. It was really awesome seeing his videos as a guy who never knew about the Assassin's Creed community back then. Like
He
like
inspired me
things
the
that
most, like
he,
easily.
yeah, he became an inspiration as well. Like I say after PD and Peter Stratford, Ian XO4 was an inspiration for him though. Like like I kind of just wanted to see if I could do shit that was as impressive as he did. I just want to give the context actually to the listener right now because I think I think I bring a unique perspective with this context. Because I was unaware of the internet and stuff like that. Well, I mean, unaware of the online hasty community. Basically, I everything I learned about AC that I can do today was 100% from me. No guides, nothing. Like I learned from the game directly. And the only thing that I needed clarification on was vaulting. Like I knew how to vault, I just didn't know that um the specific trigger was from an NSO to an NSO, which like that one YouTube video clarified. That's like the only thing I've ever had to like learn. And I just want to say this because later on when we talk about stuff about AC and like how you can learn in the game, I think I can bring a sort of perspective of a person who did manage to learn everything from the ground up. But yeah, basically, I wanted to see like with everything I learned, could I do something that was as cool as ENX04? I hope for the community I have with some of the stuff, but uh, like yeah, he's awesome. He's like really like he's like kind of like as good as it gets for AC content.
Yeah, yeah. I was gonna say, like, do you want to talk about how AC1 approaches like the Assassin's Creed in any more?
So the thing is, the way Assassin's Creed 1 approaches the Assassin's Creed, it's kind of like the most argumentative of the whole anti-dogmatic principle. Like, with nothing is true and everything is permitted. I think to understand the Assassin's Creed, like, I'll just give like a little brief overview of like why Nietzsche brought it up and like what he was talking about on and like, on the genealogy of morals. And basically the whole concept was that like he saw like a decline in traditional Western moral values, primarily those driven by Christianity, right? He kind of like wanted to derive where moral law comes from, and that's why you have the genealogy of morality. And he was using the Western, like the West, as like to infer from like the genealogy of Western morality would be more specific. And so he went into like the concept of how you can think of him like initially critiquing like how dogma and laws of morality arose from divinity, like from basically the laws of religious institutions and the powers that be that sort of controlled the world. Like, and then after that, he saw the decline of that, and there was like more of a shift towards science post World War II. but at the same, and whilst Nietzsche is more inclined towards scientific reasoning, he also saw something dogmatic in their principles, with how they would see that science is the sort of key and gateway to truth in a sort of sense. And basically, from that, he could see the same dogmatic laws on morality being pursued through science, and he kind of wanted to challenge that because like through the idea that human beings don't need truth, like this illusionary nature of truth, that like basically the laws we have, they're always susceptible to breaking, basically, like to basically decomposing. But from those like laws that sort of die, they can be reborn with new laws. Like there are new laws that are born from it, and how we can sort of progress through that way. Because he saw that he's not advocating for like man not following any law, because the thing is that if they didn't, then they would succumb to nihilism, and that was something he wasn't advocating here actually.
Mm-hmm.
And instead he was sort of advocating this sort of nature of building new laws, and like how it's a constant evolution. It's not something that's stagnant, and there's nothing to be authoritative about here. And if you aren't already aware, his sort of his big statement for it was for on the genealogy of morals was God is dead, right? That's like his big sort of statement for it. Now, when you look at that and you look at Assassin's Creed 1, right, the whole premise is that it's a world waking up to the idea that God is dead, or the idea of God is dead, right? That's like what drives the Templars and even Al-Mualim towards the Apple of Eden and everything, right? Their faith is completely destroyed. They succumb to nihilistic tendencies. They and on top of that, from like that point, when you go to the Desmond's time, you see how you still have authoritative and dogmatic beliefs like with the Templars, but how they've shifted towards science, right? Like you see dogma in the past explored through faith. Now you see dogma explored through science, right? And that's kind of like where the novelty of you have stuff like the animus's glitchy nature, and it not necessarily framing 100% of the accurate context. Like how the animus isn't this thing that you can take as 100% fact, and how it enables the player to embrace the illusion in that sort of sense. And that's why Desmond can argue against Vidic when Vidic, claims it's like a machine of 100% authenticity. And this ties into gameplay because players can play a variety of play styles in the game, but obviously they'll never know which one is the true thing, right? Like what was the thing that actually happened, right? We'll never know for sure. It'll always be like this gray area that we're in. And the game really addresses the Assassin's Creed that way. Like the game really has like these rules and laws constantly broken and reformed. And again, like even just like with its framing with in the story and narrative across these different time periods, you can actually see how it has a broader, more like holistically a more holistic branching of exploring the Assassin's Creed. And of course, with each of the targets, you see all of them are these targets. Well, okay, not all of them, but most of them have these intentions that are somewhat noble, at least. But because of the sort of lack of peace within themselves, they corrupt it, and it manifests like poison, and that poison spreads into the world. And you can basically see how this again ties back into the concept of harmony and finding peace in all things. Like Altair's journey is to dispel all that, whereas the Templars are consumed by it. And this sort of mixing of ideas is kind of like what really defines Assassin's Creed 1. Like this whole nothing is true and everything is permitted. What's really interesting about it is it infers so it takes so much from what Nietzsche wrote, but it also combines it with a bunch of other sort of thought reference material, and has this sort of thought experiment with it, right? Like on one hand it's taken from Ecclesiastes as well, with the pursuit of truth, right?
Yeah.
It's like tying it to that. On the other hand, it even takes inspiration from Nazari Ismaili beliefs, where it kind of incorporates their Neoplatonic belief structure, because in the Nazari Ismailis did incorporate Neoplatonism, like aspects of Neoplatonism into their beliefs basically. And so like that's where you have that whole concept of finding peace in all things to transcend oneself, right? Like what is it to transcend, and all that, right? So like you have that concept in the game as well, and the game really combines all these different thought experiments and really infers from so many different places to explore this idea, this anti-dogmatic idea that nothing is true and everything is permitted in its own way. Like it even refers to something, Jubair's assassination, right? A lot of people wrongfully think he's Ibn Jubayr. He's not. He's just inspired a bit by him, but he's not actually Ibn Jubayr. They died in completely different times. He's actually more inspired by the concept of illuminationism and the corrupted version of it, and it's like this whole branch of Islam. And like you can see like how the game even borrows from illuminationism and ties it into its sort of anti-dogmatic statements and stuff like that. Like it really borrows from a whole like wide landscape of anti-dogmatic principles essentially, right? Like each target comments on something different, and also its translation into the gameplay. Nothing is true and everything is permitted. You can do so many things, and like really it's about perceiving the world, and the more you understand its systems and how it works, you can make up your own rules and conquer it, right, through emergent gameplay and your own plans. Like a lot of stuff that I've pulled out and all that, it really resonates with the Assassin's Creed. The first game, because of that, is like really like the most direct and most potent adaptation of it in a sort of sense. Whereas AC2 kind of like adapts like it carries on the journey, because like I said, it's about the legacy and how the times change, and you see like how Altair is like challenging these beliefs on the Assassin's Creed and the way the assassins operate under Al Mualim, and how Ezio, like, carries a legacy and how things constantly change. You can just see those sorts of concepts of like, nothing is true and everything is permitted, where these laws are built, but then there's new laws, they decay at some point, and then there's new laws being born from them. It's really awesome and beautiful stuff, and I think the game AC1 especially lives up to it. AC2 continues it, but I'd argue AC2 is kind of incomplete because of its dev cycle and stuff like that. But yeah, this is something that AC does, and I think that the original vision really has the Assassin's Creed at its most potent. That's why I kind of like don't really like how people dismiss Assassin's Creed 2 as like not exploring the Assassin's Creed. Like they're like, oh, the only games that do it are like AC1, 3, and 4. Like I'd argue that 3 and 4 kind of like retread on stuff that AC1 does like
Yeah.
more extensively, and like AC1 really like does it way deeper, and then AC2 actually does the next part of the narrative, which is the like continuation of like how it changes through time, right? It doesn't have to just focus on that more moral aspect, and like that those themes of peace and harmony. It needs to like explore it through the concepts of legacy. It's just kind of incomplete in its design, that it doesn't get to do it as well as it could, unfortunately. And really the death cycle for that game is like a like it's such a mess. It's a miracle AC2 is as good as it is. Like
Yeah.
honestly, but yeah, like that sort of original vision for the Assassin's Creed was really compelling as well. When I write about it, I will be much more thorough and systemic in how I frame and argue all of this stuff. But like just understand, like I'm kind of like in a conversation winging a bit of my phrasing. So forgive me if I'm not framing this the best I could. I promise I will write about this in the future and do a better job.
Yeah, makes sense to me. I mean, it's something I do think about from time to time. It becomes, I think if you play the game while you're thinking about these things, the act of playing the game becomes way more fun than otherwise, because you really start to like notice the purpose and everything. Even the things that might seem, at first glance a little bit annoying, like start to become more understandable and more enjoyable, which is, I think, quite wonderful.
One statement I'm kind of like against for AC1 is the idea that it's intentionally boring. Like I've seen kind of like other people like kind of like talk about like when you're kind of doing the investigative phase, it's like, oh, you're doing I think you've talked about like how you're doing the day job of Altair, but like I've seen other people kind of like abstract it to, oh, the day job of Altair is like intentionally boring. I don't actually believe that, because I think that the way the game framed, like it just basically has this different form of interpreting the world design and like paying attention to the like that investigative phase is basically the scouting phase in stealth action design, right? And stuff
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that.
It
So
is
like
true that Altair resents having to do it, like very blatantly, like in universe. So like
yeah, like
that,
initially for
yeah,
sure. Yeah.
exactly. Initially, like that aspect is true. It's just that players are eventually supposed to grow out of that mindset alongside him, and not everybody does, right? Like,
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Because like the players who do and like understand that this investigative phase is like scouting and other stealth action games, but it gives you this greater insight into it through open world exploration. Like if you do recognize it, you're like, oh my God, this is amazing, and you can just have so much fun with that bit. But most players don't, and I'd argue most players don't even scout in stealth games. Like most, your average player will just knock out everyone, which kind of like is understandable. That like now you have a game that's emphasizing this sort of phase in stealth action design, like makes sense where like a lot of people don't connect with it as much. But
yeah.
we'll probably comment on that later when we get deeper into like more of the design aspects. But yeah,
I mean, I would definitely love to discuss like how AC1 reinvents stealth game design and how it applies these principles to an open world that is not merely, a repackaged level select screen. In AC1, the open world is like fundamental to the way you engage the game, right? Like it is constantly active. It is
yeah,
constantly it is
yeah.
always always have access to all of your functions no matter what, and the world is always it's very simulation-y, right? Like
Yeah, yeah, it's very simulation driven. And okay, I think after I talk about the stealth design, we'll talk about like embracing the illusion because of the simulation based nature. So okay, before I actually talk about the stealth design of AC1, I want to give like just a little bit of a sort of like discussion on stealth design in general. They know what a stealth game is, but a lot of people don't really have in mind the full scope of a stealth game, right?
yeah, yeah.
Like a lot of people just think sneaking, right? And sneaking is obviously a part of it, and it's like an important part of it, but there's a lot more to it. Like I highly recommend watching Randy Smith's GDC on stealth level design. If you aren't aware, Randy Smith was a key member in developing the original Thief trilogy. Like he was a lead level, like he is like one of the lead level designers on Thief 1 and 2, and he was the project lead on Thief 3. Very like informed guy on the concept of stealth. And his GDC is like a really really great talk, with stealth design. In addition to stuff like sneaking, you have stuff like even like the pre-sneaking phase, like the scouting, right? Like from a safe haven, you can like see what the enemy layout is like, what people are doing, what the environment is like, and after scouting it well, you go through. In Thief, it was like using the shadows as this safe place that you could stay still in, and like on a micro level, like you're like watching the guard patrol in front of you, so you can sneak well, and also like it gives you an insight into like the levels layout because again, if you don't know, if you've never played Thief, that game, like the material of the floor you're walking on affects the amount of sound your footsteps emit. So like this is something that's good to scout and plan your navigation around. Then you have like the actual sneaking. Then in addition to that, you have even the stealth action element, which is like really, really like a key sort of thing that a lot of people don't acknowledge. I think one, this is because of the safe scumming nature of a lot of stealth games. Like a lot of people don't actually delve into the stealth action part because
They just
if you
immediately
look,
reset, basically.
yeah, pretty much. And if you see like in the stealth action nature, you have like the whole concept of resetting stealth and like like escaping and running. And when you have something like that, you have like a concept that Randy Smith brings up, out of the frying pan and into the fire, which basically the concept is that you run into trouble. Like let's say you're detected by one guard, and then you're running away from that guard, and you accidentally run into a group of guards. Like you found one guard on patrol and you decided to run away to the barracks where like all the guards are there, right? Out of the frying pan into the fire. That's the concept, right? So with AC, and yes, and also you have things like hard covers and soft covers. Soft covers are like covers you can like go be behind and like see through them. hardcovers are like ones you can't see through, but like either case the enemy can't see you, right? So now when looking at AC is one of the few games that holistically embraces the entire spectrum of stealth action without bias towards one component of it. Thief, despite out of the frying pan into the fire existing, it's much more focused on the sneaking element. Same goes for something like Splinter Cell. But Assassin's Creed and some of the more later stealth action games, let's say like Gloomwood, Dishonored, stuff like that, but especially Assassin's Creed, it does not discriminate any component scope, like the scope of stealth action base. Because of that, you can actually see like all these different phases divided into different places. Like you have the concept of scouting, but scouting isn't just pushed into the mission immediately and you're adapting to things as the mission is going on. No, it reinvents the concept by having open world exploration be your scouting, right? As a sort of preemptive thing now. Open world games, they fundamentally encourage just exploring them, and they have like, this native value to really explore them just for the sake of exploration. Assassin's Creed 1 gives that sake of exploration a purpose, because the more you explore the world, the more you understand it. You can learn these guard layouts. You can learn the level architecture. You can learn how to manipulate all of this stuff. You can learn where you can preemptively eliminate targets and eliminate guards, so that later during your escape you don't have to deal with them. And that's a unique property about AC1. It remembers every guard you've killed in the entire city, right? Um, that's not something in later games. And it's like not really that system. Like later games aren't as systemic as AC1. AC1 has all these sorts of things. So like your open world exploration is a scouting game, and then when you play the actual game to master it and like play like your sort of ghost runs and stuff like that. Granted, like AC1 is designed around getting detected in the moment of assassination, but if you're good enough, you can like lose guards in seconds. Like I think my shortest escape route ever is 10 seconds long. Like no joke. It's
Damn.
like 10 seconds. Yeah, it's like 10 seconds. And then from that, I like escape all the way back to the bureau. Like you just go back to the bureau. And when I'm going back to the bureau, I have this whole stealth challenge of not getting detected. And to do that, like I have to understand the guard AI, I have to understand the layout, I have to understand the architecture, where it can go. All these things are premeditated, which I could experiment with, and I could sort of understand manually through the game moments before that, right? Like because of the investigative phase. A lot of people misunderstand that the investigative phase are just the investigations, in the sense that like the eavesdropping, the interrogating, the pickpocketing, and the informer missions. That is not the meat of the game by a wide margin. That's just compulsory stuff you have to do, and they're kind of like compulsory because in a in a meditative game where you're doing this where you're basically trying to plan an assassination, you need an insight about what the assassination is going to be like and where it's going to be and things in the future like the guard layouts and stuff like that, right? Because of that, you need the investigations. But the investigative phase it's not entirely encompassed by that. That's just a very small component. The investigative phase is the player really exploring the open world and dynamically interacting with it to observe certain things. Like for example, all the NPC reactions that people love about old AC, like how lively the NPCs are, is not just superficial, where like, oh, these are just like
Yeah, they serve a
for the sake of
purpose.
immersion. They serve a mechanical purpose because this is informing you which actions of yours are detected and at which ranges, right? Like for example, AC1 is a game where it's a stealth action game where guards can look up. But the thing is, it's more context sensitive to how that happens, right? Because like if you start doing like something that's out of the ordinary, like walking on beams and stuff like that, right? Non-standing objects, I think in between one or two stories high, like not super high, right? They can spot you up, right? Like a really good example is when you're doing the Garnier de Naplouse assassination. If you're up in the rafts, right? Like you're jumping across the candelabras and the beams. That's like higher up than most stealth action games would enable the guards to look at. But in Assassin's Creed, you're immediate in AC1, you're immediately spotted for that. Like guards will comment on you and stuff like that. And since during that assassination, Garnier is the only one who is informed of the assassin presence, because right, he isn't that high at the time. He's the only person there. He's the one you have to look out for to not spot you when you're jumping across the candelabras and beams and stuff. Because if he spots you, then full on combat like engages in his pursuit. So you can see like how the stealth design is so interesting in this premeditative sort of sense, because like this open world exploration where you can experiment with all the NPCs and the guards and such like that informs you on what happens later, right? Like even like something like Tamir and the Souk, right? If you were to practice the escape route, one of the escape routes you can do is you can hide within the Souk itself. Like, there's a hay bale in the courtyard. You can hide in that and lose all the guards. And then you're gonna like escape the souk through it's like channels and stuff like that, right? All of the channels of the souk have beggars at some point. You have to confront a beggar,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so because of that, you can do something like unsheathing your dagger to get them out of the way, right? Because other than that, like if you don't do that, your other options are kind of the high profile and move. Hell, you could have probably been high profiling, and the beggar could get in your way, and you bump into them because some of them are hidden behind NSOs, and a bunch of other stuff that like can trigger because of how congested the souk is with people, that you'll get like spotted by the guards there. So if you're going to do something like scare them with a dagger, you'll need to know which channel beforehand doesn't have a guard stationed, and then you'll have to keep an eye out for the RNG guards that are off duty and walking. And by the way, dear listener, AC1 is the only Assassin's Creed game with RNG guards that spawn with the crowds. So like you have
Yes.
to keep an eye you
Yes.
have to keep an eye out for that. But the thing is, you actually have the opportunity to scare away the beggar based on the channel you go through. There's some other channels that you don't have the opportunity to, because there's like a station guard adjacent to them. However, something you can do is, through knowing that guard is going to be there, before you go in to kill Tamir, you can hidden blade kill that guard beforehand, so that when you're escaping and going through that channel, that guard won't be there. You just have to keep an eye out for the RNG guards. Your sync bar will like help. Like if you don't want to look around and stuff like that, the sync bar will help let you know when they're not there by not beeping, right? So like all you have to do is keep an eye out for them, and then when they're not there, pull out your dagger and the beggars out of the way, and you can move smoothly and stuff like that, right? Like all according to plan, the way you want to do your assassination. That freedom is up to you. So you can see like how just the scouting and premeditative game is huge, and this is also ludonarratively connected to the game, because remember, Assassin's Creed is a game about meditation. So the way that the devs tied the concept of assassination and meditation together is they gamified premeditated murder through the mechanics and stuff like that to resonate it with the you know narrative beliefs of meditation. And you really have that, like it's a really like ambitious, like it's really insane to like just think of that, right? Like oh my god, they made this game about meditation through premeditated murder. Like oh my god, that's so awesome, like how it's speaking on different levels through that.
I do really
um
like
but
that. Yeah.
so like that's that phase. Then on the other hand, you have something like the social stealth. And the social stealth, you can see how it's like an evolution of I want to say Hitman 2 social stealth specifically, because Hitman 2 was like the only like that was like the Hitman game where like social stealth wasn't just like it wasn't mostly disguise. It was also heavily based on your movement and the behavior you were doing. Like if you were like sprinting and stuff, you could be easily detected because you were like looking like you were drawing attention to yourself, and your disguise wasn't covering it. They do away with that in Blood Money, because it's not the most fine-tuned and polished thing in Hitman 2. AC1 actually expands upon it, and AC1 actually manages to thrive more on it, because AC1 just fundamentally has like it's all about profiles, right? Like
Yeah.
high and low
Yeah.
profile. Like that's like the real root of AC1, if you ask me, the profile system. Because of that, like, every action in the game has a context for the profiles it has. And so based on the profile performed, it triggers like detection from the NPCs and different kinds of detection, right? Like for example, sprinting is something that guards can detect up to 5 feet, but parkour is something guards can detect up to 10 feet.
Right.
And the game is really well balanced around this because how guards are stationed, how the city's layout like has narrow roads to catch these things, so that like for example you'll have like narrow paths that are like, let's say, 10 feet wide, but there's like one guard in one position and another guard on the opposite, so like there's no place you can sprint in between where you won't get spotted. Like I mean it's factored because of that, and like you can't just run randomly, and instead like you can see like how then okay the most you can do is walk or jog, but then there might be NPCs congesting it, in which case jogging might not be so good. Hell, there might be a bunch of RNG guards along that path, in which case even walking doesn't suffice. You have to blend walk. Like you see like all these sorts of different things, right? And like just at play, and like for the sort of social stealth behaviors. And then on top of that, like the social stealth system is really deep, and I think that you can already watch like Kino's guide on it. He did like a really good video on social stealth. But in addition to that, you have like stealth on rooftops, right? And like stealth through the architecture, because like I think a lot of people, they tend to think that like okay, AC's nuance for stealth is mainly social stealth aspect, but there's also like the sort of like cover based stealth system, right? And a lot of people think that okay, this is where AC, like the older ACs, are kind of lacking. I actually think AC1 and 2 specifically are really good at this, like as good as this with this as they are with social stealth. Because of the world design and archer placements and stuff like that, like you generally have like architectural structures positioned all over the world, designed specifically to be hidden behind and to utilize the parkour mechanisms to reach or hide behind. Like for example, in the rich district of Damascus, you can find these rooftop canopies that are like they're luxurious, and because of that they have this area that you can like sort of like land into, and you can see like the parkour really line up, like the snap targeting lining up for Altair to land in a position where he enters the rooftop canopy, and on the other side is an archer, but the side of the canopy you can see through it, but the archer can't see you. It's a soft cover. You take traditional cover based stealth, but you're combining it with the nuances of AC1 and 2's level design and parkour mechanisms for how you're mantling and going around these things. Akker's Citadel, you can scale the walls, right? And the way to scale the walls without being detected by any of the guards on them is by like shimming on them, right, through the parkour mantling abilities. Design like that, where like you have even cover based stealth and vision cone based stealth that's really unique to AC. Like even in AC2, when you go to Venice, one of the really cool things it does is like everyone already knows about like how many parkour options Venice has. You have these different layers of verticality because like of how tall the buildings are, and sometimes the rooftops might not give you the best hiding spot. Like rooftops have hiding spots like chimneys and stuff like that, but not all of them have the best hiding spots. And so the means of actually bypassing the archers without being detected is to lower yourself a level in verticality by going across like maybe the beams and balconies, but simultaneously not going so low that suddenly guards like on the ground start spotting you. It's like a little middle ground. And like AC2 was like I think the only game after AC1 that actually evolved the concept for like the parkour based stealth and stuff like that, with vision cones. I think from Brotherhood and Revelation, like with Brotherhood and Revelations, they kind of like they don't really make new assets or philosophies. They kind of rehash the old stuff and like do a remix on them, I guess you could say, kind of. You can really just see this throughout AC1 and 2, especially. Like I think the most notable example that you'll know for sure, Poor District of Aker, all the broken, like, buildings and stuff like that, right? Like, the broken buildings are ones you can go inside of because they conceal how much of the vision cones around you will spot out there, and then he can do something like climbing the building from inside, right? And that way, there aren't vision cones cast on him as he's parkouring and climbing from inside the building to make it to the roof, right? So you have stuff like this at play, and this is like really, really reinventing stealth action design. And of course, finally, like I said, like you have the moment of the kill, because like once you kill enemies, this is a stealth action game in AC1 specifically that throws you into being detected, and you have to reset detection. You can just see how there's insane narratives at play here. Like actually, let's rewind a little bit. Let's say the assassination, right? Now with the assassination, some of your targets can flee.
Right.
Some of them can run away from you. This could lead to a chase. Now, if you didn't plan around it and you're not parkouring and you're just sprinting behind the target, right, to chase them, you natively cannot catch up to them because they run at the same speed as you, and so your spacing will always be constant. However, the dynamics of the crowds could come in handy, where like basically if the crowd obstructs the target and when shoving, he's slowed down. So if you're sprinting while he's shoving, you can catch up. But what I really want to hammer here is that the targets in AC1, they run from where you were supposed to like the ones who flee, they run from where you were supposed to assassinate them all the way to a guard tower. Can you see how the narrative of out of the frying pan and into the fire has evolved? Because now you're not just getting out of the frying pan, you're being led by a moth into the fire. The target is leading you, like all the guards are, who can like make this assassination harder for yourself. However, the narrative doesn't even end there because, like I said earlier, Assassin's Creed has the property that you can kill guards beforehand, and as such, it remembers the guards you killed before you went for the assassination, right? So what if you killed all the guards at the guard tower? There's no one there to protect him, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so now there's like another narrative of not just running into the fire beforehand. You can extinguish that fire, and now you're
Yes.
going,
That's what makes
right?
AC1 AC1. It's so fucking cool. You can just set
Yeah.
up your environment ahead of time, and there are so many places you can do this in.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've not just done like, like in that same series of routes on Talal where I showcased this route where like, I killed all the guys at the guard tower and then like I go like run up behind Talal and assassinate him, right? Another thing I showed with the same sort of tech was, I think it's Saint Anne's Church in the same district. For another route, basically, I killed the guards at the entrance of Saint Anne's Church, which basically enabled me to run straight into it and hide on a bench. So, in another sense, you're creating hiding spots for yourself, right? You're creating routes to hiding spots. Like that's another thing you can do with this sort of thing. AC1 has like these simple mechanics that are so powerful that they like go like a huge, like they go such a far way. Like whereas AC2, like it has like kind of like a lot more mechanics, but they're more constrained in their like sort of range of effect in a sort of sense you could say. Like the domain of their effect, I guess you could say. That like it becomes a different kind of game. And this is why I think like AC1 actually rivals AC2 in terms of its mechanics and systems, despite the new stuff added in AC2.
Yeah.
AC1 is like an example of how to make a timeless game, like one that really ages like gracefully like fine wine. Like I said, like let's go beyond that. Then there's even just the concept of escaping, where like now parkour has a stealth action philosophy to it, right? Optimized parkour paths lead to quicker escapes, right? There's some escape routes that you really won't be able to do unless you optimize your parkour, unless you want to rely on RNG, which I'm really assuming you don't want to, because like in AC1 where like the guard chases are the most aggressive that they've been in the entire series, these guys can really ambush you. I have genuinely had stories where guards have ambushed me like halfway across the city for an escape and stuff like that. It's crazy what they can do. The stealth design, this whole spectrum of stealth, is really reinterpreted in a context that's unique to AC and doesn't really discriminate any part of it. Like even the post detection part, that is a narrative in stealth. It's just one that stealth fans don't really want to engage with, unfortunately. And like I'd even argue that like combat has a place in stealth. It's just how you do that combat system. And when we get to combat, I'll talk about how AC1 is an exemplary case of that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I mean, we're about to. I think that is next on our list, right? AC1
Let
in
me just.
particular has a very unique combat system that, There are more things you can do with it than at first appears, I think. Certainly, I would not say the vast majority of AC1 players take full advantage of every behavior and every potential outcome you can execute in a fight. Yeah.
I'm gonna basically I'm gonna explain because I've probably been talking about all this stuff and there are definitely listeners who are going on like Fahrenheit, you're talking about like a lot of cool stuff, but Assassin's Creed 1 gives you too much health. Why should I do any of this stuff, right? Let's start with what the combat system achieves. Now, I'm not going to get into the types of attacks you have because I think the game really just explicitly tells you, and I think there's content out there for it. Like we have limited time, and there's content out there. Like go watch Kinography's guide on combat. All right, his guide will give you like the first half of the combat system where he's talking about what moves you have available and what they do for the combat system. Now, what most people don't realize about AC's combat system, and I'll actually talk about Luda narrative a bit. AC1's combat system is one driven by morale manipulation. It is what I like to call a stealth action combat system, which is basically a combat system driven by stealth principles. Now, what are examples of stealth principles? Well, one is neutralizing combat. Like for example, negating your enemy's offensive tools, minimizing their means of offense basically within combat. A really good example is in Hitman Blood Money, where you can take enemies as human shields, and through that this cultivates a sort of strategic form of combat, because with the human shield enemies will try to shoot around you rather than from directly in front of you, so you can basically manage them and as long as there aren't any enemies behind you, you can manage the ones in front of you so that they can't shoot at you basically. And this is like a very strategic means of combat that ties into stealth principles more than anything else. I believe that because of such a thing, we should not shy away from stealth action games that embrace combat. We should more so assess how its combat system embraces stealth action principles. That's kind of like the thing. Now, with AC, the morale system is the sort of driving ethos and philosophy for it. In AC1, a lot of people think that the beginning and end of morale is basically that if you combo kill or counter kill an enemy, you start the shock and awe kill chain, right? Like it's shock and awe basically. With the shock and awe kill chain, when you do a combo kill or counter kill on someone, they're inflicted with fear, and this moment of fear makes them vulnerable to any attack, including a hidden blade attack, which will insta kill them. This is not the end all be all of the morale system, though. See, in addition to this, when you combo kill or counter kill someone, you're affecting the mental state of enemies in groups.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What happens is the enemies in AC1, and this all ties back into AC1 being a mind game. The enemies in AC1 have a group morale that starts from groups the size of 3 and above. Like if it's 2 guards, there's no group morale at all. But from 3 and above, you have group morale. And what happens here is enemies can assume 2 types of stances: offensive stance and defensive stance. In offensive stance, that's when they're most aggressive. The higher ranks will do stuff like break defense, feints, counter kills, dodges, and a bunch of charge attacks to delay their swings. Some of them will taunt, and taunt basically has the same effect as the shock and awe fear state. When they're taunting, they're vulnerable during that period essentially, so you can get a hit in. Big thing about the offensive stance is you want to be defensive at this moment and chip in your hits, look for an opening until finally you kill a guy brutally. And by brutally I mean it's either a counter kill or a combo kill. When you do that, it inflicts fear into the entire enemy group. And when that fear is instilled into the entire enemy group, they enter defensive stance. In defensive stance, enemies are, one, susceptible to break defense because they're doing the defensive stance with their sword, and 2, they're very slow, which gives Altair the opportunity to pace himself out and then book it, run the parkour.
Like it generates tempo
or
very intensely.
yeah, or he can space himself out so he can use throwing knives and target like the like specific enemies. Given you have like very limited time in that defensive stance period, what's advised is that like you use the throwing knives on enemies like the elites and the captains, because they're the ones who like have the advanced moves like the defense breaks and all that stuff, right? So this is your chance to like instant kill them. Now, what's really interesting though, remember, targets can't be killed with throwing knives, but here's like a little interesting thing. In addition to this behavior of offensive and defensive stance, the highest ranking member of the group will reinstill faith into the enemy group, rallying them. The rally is the third vulnerable state, in addition to the shock and awe state and the taunting state. The rally is the third state like this, and that makes the highest member of the group vulnerable for a moment. So what you can do is run up and hidden blade kill the guy during that point, which then repeats the cycle because now the entire group has fear instilled in them once more. This is really, really, really good and optimized for assassinations. The target can't be killed with a throwing knife. But what you can do is you can induce fear into the enemy group, wait for the target to rally the group, and then go
blade
for the
him
hidden
then.
blade kill.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what's interesting is with that hidden blade kill, you have the extra effect that like killing the target induces shock and awe into the entire enemy group surrounding you, which gives you a really good chance to run away, basically. So you have these really interesting like complexities to the combat system. Like I'm not going to explain it, but if you know shock and awe kill chain, you know what it is, and you can also like look it up online. I don't think it's like the thing like something that like you have to use. Like I think you can have restraint in using it when you know the other combat methods. I think that's just that a lot of people in the community don't know the other combat strats because they don't understand how group morale works. So they go for shock and awe chain. Also worth noting, in some instances, shock and awe chain can be suboptimal and like kind of like dangerous because the way shock and awe chains work, right, is they scale in rank. Like they'll always start with the lowest rank and go to the highest rank. Like I'll start with rooks, then elites, then captains. If you're doing a shock and awe kill chain like that, what's gonna happen is if by chance you break the shock and awe kill chain later on into it and you leave something like someone like a captain and elite as your final enemies, one, if they're your final enemies and like it's just one elite, one captain, group morale is gone. There'll be an offensive stance, right? And two, those are enemies that you've kind of removed the one weakness, reliable weakness you have for them. The dynamic of the combat system is that the weaker enemies are weaker to direct attacks, whereas the higher ranks are weaker to indirect attacks, where like you're kind of weakening the morale.
I want to interject here and say, like, this is something I really like about AC1 is that much more so than I think any of the other games in the series, anytime you make a decision, you're kind of like there's a lot of opportunity cost in AC1. Engaging enemies in one way in particular, you are making some kind of sacrifice. Like you're choosing what to like deny yourself access to. Right, so like yes, you can kill people in certain ways. The most immediate benefit may not be the smartest thing you can do, right? Because you're kind of like losing other potential actions you could take, and I think that's really cool. It's something that's very unique to this game that isn't really seen so often in the rest of the series.
Yeah, no, 100%, 100%. That's the case. Really, like everything has like an opportunity cost as at least designed to. If you're playing really well and you're really inducing fear into the enemy group, there's a chance that they can flee.
Yeah.
And from all my testing, the maximum number of guards you can get to flee if you're really good at the game is 4 guards. I've got up to 4 guards to flee, which is pretty significant.
Pretty good, yeah. You can often resolve combat like much quicker if you take advantage of that. Because I mean, in a stealth action game, like this is what you care about. You don't actually care about killing everyone. You care about resolving the combat state.
Yeah, and like optimizing it as efficiently and fast as possible, pretty much. And this is again like it really ties back into like a combat system built around stealth action concepts, this strategical mind game about like manipulating the morale of these enemies and basically controlling how offensive they are. Additionally, with this fleeing sort of thing, it's only possible if a captain isn't present. If a captain is present, no one's gonna flee.
Yeah.
So that's why you kind of encourage take out the captain first through this other means, and then you get them all to flee. A lot of people, especially like, struggle with doing shock and awe kill chains in the later part of the game, like sequence 6 with like Maria's mission and Robert's mission, like both of
You
them.
have a really good video of that, I
Oh
think.
yeah, Maria. Yeah, so yeah, I'm going to get into, and yeah, we get to the final phase of combat. What I have dubbed, like, I haven't really seen many people do it, but like I have dubbed it as parkour combat. The parkour environments are such that you use them to move Altair to different locations and use the property of guards like not being as proficient at parkour to slowly catch up to you, and the dispersal nature of AI, the divide and conquer sort of mentality, to isolate them and take them out, right? And it's worth noting that throwing knives actually change how they work when Altair is in a combat state and not directly in combat. Like you know how like when he's in swordplay vicinity, he has the throwing knives, right?
Yeah.
Um, and you know how when he's not in swordplay vicinity and he's not in combat, he throws knives differently, like more
Yes.
accurately.
Yeah.
If he's not in swordplay vicinity and he has triggered combat and he's targeting enemies, they communicate his tension by making the throwing knife tosses less accurate. They're more narrowed down
Yeah.
in the vicinity you can throw them from, and because of that, you have to like wait and time for like the opportunities where you can throw the knife at the enemy. So like stuff like when they're stumbling with parkour and slowing down, that's your time to throw and fuck them up like that. It's like you work like this. I have a video. I think like if anyone checks my Twitter account out, I think Leo, you can put it in the description, I guess. Um,
I will, yeah.
just search Maria and then go to latest, and if you see like new Maria route or something like that, like just add me on Twitter and I'll link you the video. Don't worry.
Cool.
Like for something like Maria's assassination, especially where she's surrounded by like 4 Templars who are like the highest level of combat AI. Okay, actually second highest. The assassins at the end are slightly higher and have an interesting caveat to them. So like they have like this sort of like highest level of combat AI, and because of that, like you're more incentivized to like use parkour combat to eliminate them with the throwing knives. And then with Maria, what you want to do like really for the most optimal thing is because she can't be killed with throwing knives, you leave a few of the lower ranking guards around her, because then by killing them and having the group dynamic morale system working, that makes Maria Maria and the group enter defensive stance, and Maria has to use her rallying system to rally the guards around her, and then you can immediately kill her with the hidden blade, like as an insta kill. Well, quote unquote kill her. Like if you know the story of Assassin's Creed 1, you know
You can
what
defeat
sorcery
her.
is this.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, what sorcery is it? But yeah, but basically, like you have that, right? And now for the final bit of combat, before I go to the final bit of combat, because there are motifs here in the combat system, I want to talk about a little bit about the looter narrative. As you can see, with this concept of ego, fear, and faith, we come back to the whole cycles of life, death, and rebirth. Like, when the enemies are thriving and not dying brutally, and they're lively, they're egotistical, and like, life is thriving. You kill one brutally, and in the face of death, they're inflicted with fear, and then it's up to a leader to restore faith in them, and then for them to regain their previous morale state, right? So like stuff like that, like it works that way. It's
And
also worth noting
it
that
really resonates with how AC1 is so much about the mind, right? Like one of the most
yeah,
impactful things you can do in combat is to affect their minds.
and also you can see like how your thing is like by doing these brutal kills, you're buying yourself time, which is kind of like the meditative state, and and to win combat is to transcend it, right?
Hmm.
Like through like these sort of strategies. So you see like how all these sorts of things really line up. Fun fact, even Altair's engravings on his hidden blade all tie into the concepts of life, death, rebirth, meditation, and transcendence. Yes, I have a thread breaking it down and
Hmm.
talking about it. So if anyone is interested, again, I'll send it to you. There's a few updates I need to make to it to like refine it, because I think I could have phrased things better and like formulated certain things better, and like brought out a few other points, but like I think for the most part, what I wrote there is really concrete. The worse you play, the better the enemies get. Like their morale increases, and they'll both become more boastful. So they increase the frequency of taunts, but they also increase the frequency of stuff like charged attacks and delays and stuff like that. They become more arrogant, basically,
Yeah, yeah.
and it's really interesting. When you get to the final sequence, right? This is like where the motif is really interesting. If you really observe well, right, there's a reason why the game makes you see all the NPCs in town first before you get into combat with the assassins. Is because those NPCs who follow you, if you take the time to be patient and interact with them, like hypothetically, let's say you see like they're all creepy and zombie like and like cluster around you, right? And they'll follow you. Let's say you're aware of all the mechanics at this point. What I wanted to do was I was like, all right, y'all need to get back. And like I unsheathed my weapon because like usually in the town, when you unsheath your weapon, people are like, oh my god, like that's crazy, and they back away from you. In this sequence, they do not back away. Because
Yeah.
what the game does is, since they're controlled by the apple, they're emotional. Like there are these behaviors in the game which are emotional reactional ones.
Those have been just
That are
completely deadened. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, they're completely gone. But this is significant because the upcoming battle, like especially with the first set of wave of assassins you fight, who like like just before Malik shows up, that first wave of assassins, that should get you thinking that, oh wait, if their emotions are gone, that means the morale manipulation system is gone. I can't use morale manipulation against these assassins, right?
Right.
So how do I beat them, right? Like that's why like a lot of people, they're on the defensive thing where they're constantly countering, and they're like, the thing is the game wants you to use throwing knives in parkour combat, because like not so much parkour combat, but like basically if you in that fight area, if you notice, there's like this one big building that, like I think it's like a 2-story, 3-story building that you can basically climb with a ladder and go up the top. From there, like as like some of the assassins are following you, you can throwing knife them, and then you can jump from that roof to the market stalls below, which will basically catch your landing. Like you won't take damage if you land on the market stalls. And as the assassins are approaching you and you're spaced out, you can use throwing knives. What's really interesting though, Leo, is because like here's the thing, because the space is so small when you're doing this, realistically, if the guards, if all the enemies you fought here work like they normally do, it wouldn't be so realistic to make this work because there would be too many assassins just on your ass in your proximity. But the thing is, what they did was they had the assassins you're fighting in two different ranks. One is like the rooks, and one is the higher rank assassins, not quite Altair rank, but higher rank.
Yeah.
Um, and the higher rank ones are more like their minds are more developed, so they're more resistant to the apple.
Which
These ones,
means it means that they still have some degree of like morale manipulation that can be done to them, which is really
kind
interesting
of, yeah,
because
kind of, because basically what happens is they can run after you,
yeah,
whilst the rest walk like zombies. They will run at you, and because they run at you, you can split up these two groups.
yeah,
It's like a really short segment of the game. Like this is the only fight that's like it, but they actually have this detail, and it's insane. But yeah, so like you can split the higher ranks from the lower ranks that way, and you can take out those assassins and stuff like that. And then the lower ranks, since they're walking towards you, they won't have caught up, and so you can space yourself easily and take them out with throwing knives as well. And then
yeah.
of course after that, there's the whole horde of assassins. You don't actually have to fight them. You just have to
You can stall for
wait
time.
them out. Yeah, you stall for time until Malik and gang like eliminates them with throwing knives, and that's why you're given throwing knives then, because then in the next part with the Al-Mulim fight, like again, like those enemies, they don't scale with the whole like they don't have morale systems to manipulate, including Al-Mulim. But here's the thing: the garden is built around parkour combat, same way like the cemetery where you fight Maria is in, like about spacing yourself and stuff like that. and that's when it makes sense why you can use eagle vision to spot al-Mualim, right? Because if you were using normal combat, it's kind of like you're doing like an RNG sort of thing for full synchronization, right? Because like the thing is like if you hit al-Mualim directly, he can counter hit you,
Yeah.
and if you're waiting for defense, he can break defense you, and all the other al-Mualims can interject, and like by then your eagle vision on him highlighting him gold can run out and he can get lost. So like what you want to do, the optimized way to do is like you run away. In fact, the game rewards you from having a sense of knowledge of the garden, because the way the garden works is like you have these enemies in front of you, but if you spend time in it, you'll know that, hey, behind you is just a waterfall, so you can just move backwards and roll down, and
Yeah.
that immediately spaces you from the enemies in front of you. Again, those sort of meditative principles rewarding you in the game. So you do that, and then you can split the enemies up, and you can use eagle vision a lot from afar. And once the real Al Mulim is isolated, you target him and use one throwing knife, and he's done. That's the optimal way to deal with him, right? And again, this whole stealth action thing, but you can also see the motifs here, right? Like of how it ties now into these specific narrative principles of like piercing through the illusion, right? Like and things like that, right? Like Masyaf was this place of truth throughout the game, and in sequence 7, it's cast an illusion, and you're piercing through it, through its understanding and stuff like that, right? Like that's what's really cool. Now, this is the whole combat journey, okay? And now I know that the dear listener, the very smart dear listener, I called you smart, so now you have to follow me back. But yeah, okay. But Fahrenheit, this is all super cool, but I don't need to do any of this because I have like health for days. I have so much health, right?
Right. There's like
And
very little punishment or consequence.
yeah, the thing is, Assassin's Creed was actually formally like, and even the final product really, it's designed around the concept of dying in one hit. Like the reason why in the game you can see Altair have different animations for taking damage, primarily animations where he takes damage from the front, where like he barely deflects it with the sword, like it's like a deflect but like a shitty one, like he barely deflects it, and you take damage. Like that was one form of damage where you were only allowed up to like 2 or 3 hits of that and you die. On the other hand, hits directly on Altair's flesh were an insta kill. So like if he was hit from behind, if you whiffed a parry and you were hit, so like feints become so much more dangerous, or if your defense was broken and you were hit, right? And for those of you saying like, oh, but you can dodge a defense break, note two things. One is you only unlock the dodge on your like fifth assassination. On the fifth assassination is when you unlock the dodge. So up until then, if you encounter an enemy who breaks your defense, you're just dead.
Yeah.
If you like, an enemy, like a lot of times, like what they like to do is like they dash in and then break defense.
Yeah, yeah.
If
They
you were
did a
gonna
little quick
react,
step toward you. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, the quick step, right? If you were expecting like an attack to counter,
That will catch
somebody's
you
gonna
out.
do an attack. Yeah, yeah.
It's crazy how enemies have mix
Yeah.
ups.
Yeah,
Like,
dude, Leo, I had like an enemy do like two elites do 3 feints on me subsequently and get like 3 feints in a row. 3 feints.
that's
Like
crazy.
yeah, I know. But yeah, but yeah, like so the thing is like if you do a counter hit before a break defense, right? You can't dodge. So again, like break defense is actually quite deadly. But again, this is the whole thing, like dying in one hit. Now, the reason why they removed this, like, is because they found that players weren't learning the game. That like because of how it worked.
Yeah,
Because
they become
I've just
so risk
explained, I've just
averse.
yeah, and I've also explained how complex this combat system is to you, right? I just went through so many layers of this combat system, right? So when you see all of that, the issue is that there's so many narratives to grasp that if you're then adding the pressure of fear, like the thing about difficulty in games and pressure is it's often effective when you're trying to focus on one narrative, right? Like when you're trying to funnel them towards a specific direction. That's when it really thrives, and it's because and like and it kind of makes answers easier. in Assassin's Creed, that's a complex thing because, like I said, this is a game that's non-discriminatory towards the entire stealth action spectrum, right? Like a lot of players could end up having this sort of effect where, oh, I'm dying a lot in combat, I'm only going to escape. But then if they only escape, imagine how they'll cope in sequences like the fight against Robert or Al Molim,
Yeah, where you
right?
have to stand your
Like they're going
ground.
to, yeah, and like you need to have an understanding of the combat system at that point. So then the thing is, you have that going on for it, and so what the devs did was they basically made the health bar a diegetic scoring system. This is why your health bar is a sync bar, and it's why Altair, like in the beginning of the game, like just before you start the first memory as Altair, the game tells you like it's like how in sync you are with Altair. Obviously, like not 100% in sync, but like you know, things that didn't happen to him, right? Like he never took any damage. He didn't screw up like that. So it basically is a means of keeping you within the confines of the Assassin's Creed, and to also encourage the player to optimize and experiment, because they realize that like if they just enforce that difficulty, it would be too hard on players and they might not learn. They give you this generous health bar that is to be treated as a scoring system.
I like this a lot as a concept, but what would you say to players who, react like if the health bar is a scoring system, like how can this be true when the game doesn't really track it in any way and doesn't really like tally your results from that in any way?
Yeah, no. This is the thing I'm gonna say. Like basically, the thing is like it's not a conventional scoring system. Like I said, it's a combination of a health bar, a scoring system, and also a positive and negative reinforcement learning device, right? Because like I said, like the more damage you take, the more morale enemies get, right? So there's like a sort of thing like where, oh, okay, all of a sudden they're doing well. And on the other hand, the game wants to encourage you to not take damage, which is like why like let's say like I think what it does, it would assume that hey, you got a counter kill, this buys you some time, and like you're negating damage and stuff. That's why it starts healing you, right?
Hmm.
Like
Do
there's
you
no scoring.
do you,
And wait, so I just want to finish my thought here. So then basically as a scoring system, it's really just binary, like really like did you full sync it or not? Like
right.
that's really the only thing. And it's kind of like the game's trying to or like urge the player, this is the ultimate goal. And the only reason it doesn't explicitly tell you is because this game is completely diegetic. So it had to say like, oh, how in sync you are with your ancestors' memories or not. But it leaves the sort of goal to you as the player. In concept, I like this. In execution, needs more refinement, and Leo and I will get to this.
What I was gonna ask is, do you think the game would convey this in a more understandable and legible way if it made this a little bit more like surfaced to the player? Like if indeed there were numbers around these things visible anywhere.
My sort of like thing that I always wanted to do like is kind of like I wish that like the memory block, right? Like the memory block won't like even when you finish that final mission, right? It won't like it'll be like a half full thing rather than a full like the icon for the memory block is like a DNA strand, right? Like for
Mm-hmm.
each memory. So like it would be half full instead of fully, and the way to trigger it to be completely filled would be by doing the full sync thing. Like it would be something like that. And personally, I always thought it would be like a really cool, rewarding thing if like imagine the final um Eagle Vision moment with Desmond was only unlocked if you full synced all the assassinations. Like I
That would be
personally
so
thought
sick.
that would be awesome. I'm not saying that like what the game does right now is like dissonant or anything. Like it's completely fine because of the framework set, and I think that like this is like just a little touch that I think would have made it even better. What it does is completely fine and great, and like it makes a lot of amazing decisions. I think that like that's one way you could have made it clearer. Another thing that would have made it clearer is really just the like difficulty options that make it more obvious. Now the viewer will ask me, okay, Fahrenheit, if the issue is that the player doesn't know all of this, and the difficulty system as a result can't be what it is because of that, why not just have the game explicitly tell the player how everything works, so that then you can have this difficulty mode because they know how the game works and they can play with it in mind. Well, that's the other thing, right? This game doesn't want to give you information. It wants you to seek it. And this is something that like won't resonate with everyone, but I really do think it's like something that's significant, especially when you think of like narratives in
That
gaming,
makes
right?
sense
Like think about
also
like
because Al Mualim literally says something like this at one
yeah,
point, right? Information
no,
gained is more valuable than information given.
yeah, exactly. That's exactly what he says. That's the whole concept, right? Like I said earlier, with the this is why I wanted to preface with the stealth action design, where I was bringing up stuff about scouting in the world and all. Through scouting, you can probe the world of AC1 with a lot of experiments, and through probing it, you learn how it works. Like you are gaining that information firsthand. This is why AC1 doesn't have a day-night cycle and has time framed as static, and also doesn't have a dynamic notoriety system. Because the thing is, AC2 has dynamic notoriety to discourage active killing, and like because then you have notoriety on you, and like the game is
Right,
harder. Granted, like there needed to be fine tuning and difficulty there because it's too easy to get rid of notoriety, but that's a different conversation. AC1 doesn't want to do that.
right.
AC1 wants to invite the player to fuck around in the world. To like really like just like play around and like figure out how things work, like the systems. Like for example, with Altair, you're fighting a bunch of guards, right? Like let's say you kill every guard in town. Altair probably didn't do that, right? He probably didn't kill every guard in the city.
Yeah.
But the game enables you to do that because it's your chance to experiment and learn. EC1 is a game about labbing, like in a fighting game. It's like about
That's
labbing,
really true.
right?
And I do want to say as well, the other nice thing about notoriety working the way it does in AC1 is that on the one hand, the player cannot, it doesn't raise dynamically as you play. It on the
Yeah,
one hand, it becomes a part of the game's like fixed difficulty curve, right? Like later in the
yeah,
game, you will always be more notorious. And the reason why that is so effective is that not only can the player not raise it dynamically, the player cannot reduce it, right? Like that is what makes it
exactly.
effective. Because in AC2, you can
Yeah,
just like rip down a few posters, pay a herald or two, and then you're done,
yeah.
right? Like AC1 does not let you do that. If you're notorious,
If
you're notorious. They know you come for them now. The man in the white hood, right? Like,
yeah, if we have time, I'll give you my pitch for how I'd overhaul AC2's notoriety partially if we have time. But yeah, one thing I want to say like with this AC1, like this framing of like labbing and stuff. This is why, like I said, time is static, and this is why like when you kill a guard like that, resetting memory, right? That's like that. There must have been something that was like the memory has to be reset. We don't know whether what like how much of what we're playing is real or not, right?
yeah,
We
yeah.
can I'll dive into this more when we get into like embracing the illusion of Assassin's Creed. But this is how you learn. You toy with the world, and like even like parkour paths. Altair probably wasn't like parkouring everywhere like an idiot and having everyone look at him like he was probably just looking at the route and he could do it. But the thing is, the player can't resonate. Like the player can't simply look at a route and be able to do it. They have to practice to pull it off. Like they have to, right? And so this investigative phase being framed as such to probe the player to actively experiment and learn and gain that knowledge for themselves and plan their assassination route and basically have time reset so that with the events we see not concrete and laid in stone. This is like what Assassin's Creed is about. This is what like enables them to learn, and this is also why the devs couldn't simply give the answer to the players, and that's why what they did was they took a leap of faith with the player base and basically hope that like through trusting them, and especially with the whole beliefs in co-authorship, which Patrice really had, like he had like a lot of faith in the player base.
It's interesting that
um
Ancestors works
yeah,
exactly the same way.
yeah, no, that's what like Ancestors is an evolution of AC1 in many ways. And that's why I love it so much. But like yeah, you can see that this sort of concept, like this is why it is the way it is. Now, because of that, um AC1 has a unique fail state. Like remember how I was bringing up with Demon Souls? Like I was gonna say AC1 has like a really interesting fail state. Where basically the fail state of AC1 is that since it's a game about the mind and knowledge and stuff like that, and Patrice Desiree has said this, it's basically a game that you can play, but if you're not participating, like you're putting your heart and soul into it, you will be skipping chapters, and so you will rob yourself of the experience. And this translates to literally every bit of its like making. It translates to the gameplay, it translates to narrative motifs in the game, it translates to environmental storytelling, it translates to the story because there's so much you have to like piece together both through interactive storytelling, environmental storytelling, gathering of clues and notes and the investigations and the Desmond inspections. Hell, even investigating the cryptic messages at the end, they can be solved by you through a mix of real world research and what those symbols are, which is what the game wanted to do. Like, you really have to put your heart and soul into the game to really get it. I think that because of this, artistically and like design wise as a game, it's a complete success. Commercially though, we need to talk about commercially though. We gotta put our hand on the table and like address a few things. Having faith in the player is fine. I respect everything. But man, this game could have resolved a lot from just having some difficulty modes. Like, if you just had optional difficulty modes, I think that you wouldn't alienate players who might have been ready to, and willing to participate in this. Like I think that like there are players out there who get Assassin's Creed 1. Today I sent you a tweet from some other guy. Like, I mean, I think last evening actually. Yeah, I sent you a tweet of some guy who commented on my thing. Like, he's talking about like HUDless playthrough, full sync, all that. Right? I've never spoken to that guy before. He got it.
Right.
There are people who understand the concept, right? But some people, it just might not occur to them. And not just that, but like for people who it does occur to, it's kind of tedious to actually enforce, because the thing is, you can mess up. Like, the whole point of like doing that is like you mess up and then you have another go at it, like you reattempt. AC1's reattempting, like, this game has amazing replay value, like it's like the gold standard of it. But Jesus Christ, dude, like holy, like dude, this game's replay feature, like reload features,
They're awful.
are abysmal.
They're
They're like
awful.
so bad. And in addition to that, and I mean on multiple layers, if you reload from the sequence, you have to start from the conversation with Al Mulim all the way to the assassination. The game has the worst overlap of like things it does remember and things it forgets. So like things it does remember are like, for example, the vigilantes you've earned the trust of. So if you wanted to do a chase assassination without the help of vigilantes, but you already unlocked them, guess what? You can't. You need a new save for that, right? So that sucks. Another thing is the thing that they don't like that they do make you do again are the goddamn investigations, which like like I'm a defender of the investigations and like their presence in the game. I don't see any reason to do them on replays though, unless the
Right.
player wants to,
Because
right?
they shouldn't be
And then on
necessary on replays. Yeah.
yeah, right. Yeah, and then on top of that, another thing is, if you want to do the thing like, okay, instead of reloading the memory, what if I just let myself die and then have the game reload myself to the checkpoint? Well, guess what, buddy? The checkpoints aren't that great either. Like, the point it restores you at is fine. The thing is though, it doesn't like restore you frame wise like where you were. It just basically like has you spawn where you were and spawn enemies around you, but it doesn't like memorize exactly what like the state of every enemy around you at that point, like them being different distances or something. They just spawn you around like in a circle like that. Whereas like it's not like reloading a safe state, which is kind of like something that I think the game should do if it has like a checkpoint system like that. And in addition to this, I mean, dying takes ages because like like you let yourself die. Guess what?
You have like a billion
You have to wait
health.
for that, and yeah, you have like so much health. And then on top of that, you have the stupid like fact that the checkpoint system is sometimes bugged. Nakud's mission, if you reload that, the archers go haywire and start hopping around everywhere, and you don't really get that authentic reattempt really. So like, yeah, this is like a quality of life issue that is unfortunately a severe, like a really bad issue with the game.
It's so prevalent that players sometimes even like play with and toy with it. Like I'm sure you've seen the hiddenblade.com, the broken
Yeah,
timeline exploit where
yeah,
you can
yeah,
do
yeah,
certain
yeah.
things, you can collect a flag which saves the game state, and then when you reload, those things remain how they were, right? Like,
I'll tell you right now, Leo. I thought that was a discovery I could show the world, but then when I saw it on ENXO4's channel, I was like, God damn it, he beat me. He beat me. So I was like, no, no. If only I was part of the Assassin's Creed community when I was 7. If
if
only
only.
7-year-old me. Yeah, like I was like, God damn it, Leo, no. But yeah, like yeah, it's like I saw that ENXO4 did it. I was like, oh
Yep.
man. But yeah, yeah, so like that was but yeah, like it is. And on one hand I do want to say, like, I do want the easy mode in the game to be a thing. It's just that I want different difficulty modes and better reload features so we can get past this. I think
Yep.
that's actually cool that ENXO4 was able, and the players from back then were able to find so much you could do, like just fun shit in the simulation with breaking the game. But then on the other side hand, you also have, like, playing the game and you're not breaking it when it's like super awesome, right? This is my proposition basically. Three difficulty modes. Easiest difficulty mode is going to be the one that we have current. The base difficulty mode, which is the one that you start with, the medium, like the normal, right, is basically you have the game as it plays during the investigative phase, where you, like in the investigative phase, you have generous health because that way the player is around to is allowed to probe the game and fuck around and, like, basically figure out how shit works. But when the assassination phase starts, you're locked into full sync, and then people are like, "Oh shit!" Like, because I'm locked into full sync,
Now you have
I
to
need to
like do
like
well.
like yeah, I need to do well. One hit, like, oh, guess what? You get into combat with Garnier. Now you haven't. Now you better hope you utilize those morale properties, because guess what? If that guy, like, let's say, counters you twice, you're dead, and like otherwise, if he defense breaks you, you're done, right? He defense breaks you, it's instant kill because you don't have the dodge at that point, right? Like there's no way to get around it. So that's what it would be. You'd actually feel the balance of the difficulty system in the game. What's actually insane about AC1 is that in its current state, because the game isn't played at the difficulty it's fine tuned to, it's often ostracized as being this stealth action game with bad, like poorly tuned difficulty. But when you're actually playing it on full sync, it's one of the most balanced stealth action games I've played in my life.
Yeah.
Like it's more balanced than Thief.
It's
It's
just
like the
tough
only
because
one.
the game doesn't like formally surface that to the player in any way, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah. So, anyways, but like you have that, and then the hard mode would basically be the entire game is like full sync. The entire game is that. All right, like beginning to end, you do full sync pretty much. That's what my proposed difficulty system for Assassin's Creed would be. And I think that way you're still maintaining faith in the player. The player who goes with the easy mode and robs himself of the opportunity can still rob themselves, and you have that unique fail state. But at the same time, you have like it's much more convenient to play the game. I'd even make it like for the reload features that basically for memories you've completed. Like for example, each and every investigation has its own memory, right? Like the DNA strand, right? Like basically for any memory you've completed, when you replay a mission, you can toggle which ones are remembered as completed or not, basically, right? So that way when you reload, you can be like, if by chance you want to do that investigation again, you can, right? But otherwise, if you toggle like, oh, I don't want it to, which I think most players will do that, you don't have to. And likewise, you can do that with stuff like the viewpoints. You can do that with the safe citizen missions, and that way you get around, like, the vigilante problem I mentioned earlier. All that sort of stuff. You can do that, right? So that's what I kind of recommend. And that's kind of like my solution. And I think, is that about it for combat tutorialization and the difficulty mode? I think that's the whole thing,
yeah,
right?
yeah. That's the core stuff that's like the most important, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, we do have the list to refer to. Let's take a look.
Oh, HUDless versus HUD.
Right, yes, this is a topic
Yeah.
that is very popular to talk about, and my thoughts on this
Yeah.
have evolved over the years, so it would be interesting to bring up.
Do you want to go first? Because I think I've rambled so much. I just need I need a second. So like,
Sure, sure.
if you want to go first, and then I'll go after you.
Yeah, yeah. So I think that there is this idea that the best way or like the only valid way to play Assassin's Creed 1 is like full HUDless. And there is merit to this. I think if you've never tried to play AC1 HUDless, you should do so because it is going to give you an experience that will make you reevaluate this game and what it can be and like what it can provide to you. But if you've already played a bunch of the game HUDless, I don't think that toggling HUD on immediately like invalidates the game. There are pros and cons to each way to approach it, and in fact, like diegetically, the Animus is designed to be able to toggle these on very granularly, and there are good reasons to do so, right? I think even the idea, I think, is that it's meant to be like a teaching tool, even, and a way to like enjoy the game differently. But even beyond that, like there are considerations made in the design for how certain things work. I mean, if you're playing without HUD, the example that you like to bring up and which I'll bring up here is the way viewpoints are handled and the way map unfogging is handled, right? And it's like one of the things that a lot of people don't know about is that the radius that a viewpoint unfogs whenever you sync it is actually based on its physical height in the game world.
Yeah.
And that is something you would simply never know if all you do is play the game with HUD off, right? And without consulting your map. The other thing I think that is really smart about AC1 in terms of its minimap, or in fact its radar, because it really is more of a radar, it chooses to withhold information very intentionally, right? Like,
Yeah, it's like extremely minimalist.
and this is very, very intentional, and it makes the game really interesting in a way that some future games kind of step back and step away from and turn their backs on. I mean, when you compare the AC1 minimap to like later game minimaps, it is night and day the amount of information the later games give you. And I think that this can be harmful in two ways. One is that it gives the player a bit too much power, and the other is that when you put so much information in front of the player, it can actually be overwhelming. And, you know, parsing what's important and what's not actually becomes more difficult, like needlessly so. Whereas in AC1, like, what does the minimap actually give you, right? Like, it's basically just hiding spots if you're in a chase, right? It
Yeah,
is
and
nearby
investigation.
investigations.
Like basically the targeted things you need, like the investigations bureau, the target. Yeah,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
the essentials basically.
the essentials. Yeah, and like,
And
what does it not show you?
the city layout, the entire city layout is not there basically. It's not translated from the map to the mini map, and this is actually significant because falling into the problem that a lot of other AAA games have, where you just have your eyes fixed on the mini map rather than the screen. In AC1, you're actively punished for that because what if like you're running to this blue dot on this like blank space, and you're running and running, and suddenly you make it to it, and then you all of a sudden like you were on the ground and you realize, oh shit, it's on the roof. It's a roof garden, right? Because of the fact that the layouts aren't on the minimap, you can't differentiate the sense of verticality. You can't differentiate whether there's something in between you. The player's forced to extrapolate. Like you're nudged towards it, but you're still forced to like extrapolate and like like focus on the game or even memorize hiding spots. So like labbing the environment and stuff like that. All that sort of stuff, right? Like that's what you're supposed to do, and that's kind of like what I really love about AC1's HUD. Like it incorporates dynamics that you wouldn't get from a HUDless playthrough, and simultaneously the dynamics narrative it incorporates are resonant with the game's narratives, its ethos. Same thing can even go with like the sync bar in terms of like like social status indicator of AC1, right? That one, like I said, like if you're playing HUDless, unless you've memorized the places of stationed guards, like even beyond that, you're always gonna have to do a check around yourself, like whether there's any guard because of the RNG nature of spawns and stuff before you do something high profile. Unless you've gone to a place where no NPC wanders, because there are like there are like dead zones like that designed for you to go where no NPC has wandered to. On top of that, when you have the SSI system, on one hand, it actually helps negate that. Like if no one's around you in your immediate vicinity, you already know. So immediately, like you don't have to do a check, you can just go. On the other hand, if someone's around you, it can be of different natures. On one hand, it can be like an RNG guard. On another hand, it can be a station guard. The SSI is for when you're within the detection radius of the guard, not necessarily the vision cone of the guard,
Yeah.
right? So
You have to pay
you,
attention.
yeah, so you actually have to pay attention. If it's like a station guard and you know the layout already, you know the guard formation,
You're rewarded for
and
that
you
knowledge.
don't you yeah, you're rewarded for that knowledge, and you don't need to know about them, right? Like you don't need to check on them basically. But the only ones you're checking for is, are there RNG guides, right? Based on your spot and stuff. So you have these unique dynamics that really encourage this, and they ultimately like even act like as a sort of means to, like, they have their own unique dynamics and their own valid play style, but they also help nudge you towards the HUDless playthrough in different ways by like not robbing you of that experience. And that's the thing, right? Like again, like with HUDless playthrough, you're like you said earlier, like, in terms of like the use of viewpoints and stuff, viewpoints only become useful for the specific bird's eye view they give you, which is actually relevant in AC1 because the viewpoints were positioned to show you specific interesting details about the layout to form your assassination plan on a macro level. So like on the HUDless playthrough, they have that sort of thing, but like to actually find shit, you're just listening to directions and and basically searching, right? So like both narratives and how they work, they really converge at the same place through different like paths, which is really really awesome, I feel. And yeah, that's kind of like what I want to talk about HUDless and HUD play. Like again, like even like just having something like an ammo count versus like with your throwing knives versus like in the HUDless experience, you're counting like you're observing Altair's throwing animation, because based off like the batch of throwing knives he has, his throwing knife animation changes. It's like just all that shit is like so like it's so awesome that like like they managed to holistically find ways for all of this to sort of like tie in and stuff like that. So if you've played Assassin's Creed, you're very well aware that this game doesn't actually have like cutscenes, and that was like one of the mandates by Ubisoft.
It was doing like the one take thing before God of War almost. Kind
Yeah,
of.
kind of before Dead Space 2. The only cuts you have are like you do have fast forwarding memory, and you have
Like the only times it cuts are like technically everything is still like continuous because you're
yeah.
experiencing Desmond's perception. And then the only time Desmond cuts is when he sleeps, right?
Yeah. And by the way, like if you people wanted to know why when he sleeps, he sees like a bit of the cryptic messages, is because sleep is very much like, has parallels with meditation. So it like really like ties back into that whole sort of thing, like that peace of mind is what's like cultivating his ability to learn eagle vision from Altair, right? That's why the sleep is really important. That's why it's like actually not like like a big, like it's not like the game um just blatantly giving you some form of foreshadowing in a brutish way. Like it actually makes sense why that foreshadowing is there. It's worth noting, like I said, this game is about participation. It's about putting your soul into it. A big part of that was actually even the cinematic moments. Patrice wanted to treat the player as an actor, right? What he did is he basically wanted the player to always have agency to be able to perform like certain actions during these cutscenes and stuff like that. Now, obviously, for some people, they'll be like, "Oh, but that's like really minimalistic. All you can do is really just walk around and cut different camera angles." I'd say that's only part of it. There's actually a lot more details. For example, target ones are obviously the best because like, you can like position yourself in different places to actually like immerse yourself and hide yourself in the crowds, and also strategically locate yourself for when the assassination triggers. Like you can do that with Tamir, for example, and like, position yourself to like where he might head and stuff like that. Like you can position yourself, you can do stuff like that. But even more, you even have like these other really interesting details. Like for example, when you enter Masya for the first time and you see there's this like assassin who greets you upon entry, right? Most people just stand there and listen to him. What you can actually do is you can start walking away immediately,
Yeah.
and the guy will follow you and talk to you, and the camera perspective will change to the normal cam, which is really interesting because like like this is the sort of like, even though it's like such a small thing, it's the kind of role playing and sort of synchronicity that Patrice wanted, because at this point in the game, by doing that, you're showing an impatient Altair. Whereas like then later on in the end of the game, if you're not doing that, it could mean like, oh, Altair is taking himself seriously. Or maybe you can have Altair do the same thing again, but this time it's not in the context of him just being impatient. It's him seeing something so serious transpiring that he's heading to the fortress immediately, right? In Garnier's assassination, when his prisoner escapes, guards catch him and start beating on him, and the crowds are around him. The scene makes sure not to go on without the player, because if the player is a far distance away, Garnier won't actually enter through the doors. The game actually freezes in that moment until the player walks towards the crowd, and then Garnier opens to the doors and the scene continues. Likewise, you can also see the game like actually contextually cue this with Talal, because like he's like step into the light. My favorite one of all of them though is with Maria, because with Maria, what happens is you're at the procession, right? Like the funeral. That's the only cinematic moment where you're permitted the action of praying for the player to basically blend in with the people who pray during the moment of silence, right? What's really, really funny though is if you're not in the line of sight of Maria, and like hypothetically you just didn't enter the cinematic triggered, we chose not to enter the crowd, Maria will not spot you, and the ceremony will not proceed. So you have to enter the crowd, and then Maria will spot you. So like there is like an active participation and systems sort of working with this sort of stuff. And again, you can also strategically position yourself for when the cinematic moment ends, and it's actually quite useful for Maria. I even did that for like my route basically. So you can do stuff like that.
Yeah, one of the
And
more fun ways to play AC1 like on a replay is to just never hit those glitches. Just always stay in control
yeah,
during every quote
yeah.
unquote cinematic, right? Like
Yeah, and the glitches are also really cool though, because like they're a contextual way of cutting to these contextual cams, right, and stuff like that. And when I say contextual way, I mean like as in like they're diegetic, right?
yeah.
It's like this glitch to the animus that does that, which is really awesome. Um, One thing that's really cool also is like some of the dialogues. Like this is why like the more static scenes where they couldn't do anything, they just want to leave it all the like up to the player, right? Like you just control your movements, and you control the camera perspectives and stuff like that. But what's really cool is in some conversations you can actually see how an idea is kind of framed. Like for example, just for role playing sake, right? Like something I do is like with Malik, the first time you see him, he's kind of like not in a mood to help you, and like Altair is like, fine, then I'll go look on my own, right? Because Malik doesn't give you directions of where to head to, and like wait, like waste my time and all that stuff, right? I can't remember the exact dialogue right now, but basically this is what Altair says. There's like this moment of silence between him and Malik. What I like to do is I like to make Altair start walking to the door, and then Malik says, "Wait, wait, wait," and then I stop and like I turn to him, right? Like you actually do have these sorts of like openings and stuff like that. It's like I know it's like a really really small thing, and I know that like there's going to be some list. If my friends are listening to this, they're going to be like, "Oh my god, this is the most pretentious motherfucker I've listened to like in my entire there are people who are gonna who are gonna be like that, which is fine and all. But like I'm just saying, right? Like I think it's really cool that the game went this far, even for this element of the game. Like Patrice even said that, he likes like when Altair is arrogant, he likes to show his back to the guy, like to the person he's talking to, and then otherwise he likes to face him. And um, I think like what's also really great about it is because of the animus. If you're like just you have a player who's like just screwing around, like let's say just constantly spinning Altair in circles and no one's addressing it, it could just be the animus bugging, right? Like that's another thing, right? Like you just never know. Like that's like the really really cool thing. I think there are things they could have expanded on it, like maybe like through the puppeteer system, that like certain like actions that Altair could like bring about. I was actually hoping they'd expand upon it in AC2. They kind of do their own thing, but it's really just quick time events. But yeah, I just wanted to bring this up really quickly because I thought it was like a cool sort of thing that the game does that no one talks about. I already talked about the whole investigative process, like the phase and all. Let me talk about the actual investigations. I think that people need to understand a few things. People bring up the whole concept of variety with investigations. I actually think that the investigations benefit from less variety. What I think that the investigations could be is only commit to the eavesdrops, interrogations, and pickpockets, nothing else, and then commit to maybe bringing it down from 6 investigations to 4, and you combine the information of some of that. The reason why I don't want variety amongst the investigations is people need to understand that AC1 is a systemic game, like completely systemic, and because of that, it sort of like operates on having the investigations only exhibit mechanics that already exist in the game. Additionally, the investigations are intentionally a formulaic framework in the game because it's a formulaic thing that's implemented to have you learn the observe and learn the more unique aspects of the game better, which is like, the mission design and the level design, right? Because, like, for example, Nakud's mission, the interrogation for that, the despot, he walks past into the abandoned citadel. And when he goes into the abandoned citadel, there's a blockade of guards and there are archers, right? So that like informs the player that okay, wait, there's these archers and this blockade of guards. Like it gets the player to think of like how to bypass the archers through parkour and going into the citadel. Maybe it involves killing an archer, or that okay to bypass the barricade of guards there, I should do a safe citizen mission to go inside. Like it informs you of the specific circumstance, design of that mission. And in addition to that, investigations also inform you about, you know, the mission to come with information that you can't infer from the world design alone. And on top of that, they are also a storytelling mechanism. Like you do actually have, uh, but this is mainly you can only feel this in the console port because most of it is there. A lot of it is scrapped in the PC port with the new investigations that suck. But basically, with those, you can see like a lot of characterization gone into the upcoming targets. You can see a lot of um, motifs that are about to happen. Like for example, you can see in Majda Din's assassination, the eavesdrop you do is for a guy who's talking about his son that's going to be executed. And when the assassination comes, you see him and his friend try to stand up against Majda Din before being shot down with a bow and arrow, right? So like you have actual narratives there, and likewise, an eavesdrop in Nakud's mission, you hear the about like the import of wine, which gives you an impression of Nakud like being like a man who betrays his faith, which is accurate. He isn't religious, but at the same time, uh, I mean he's not only not religious, he's angry at his god, but like not only that,
By the
but
way, real
in addition
quick,
to that, yeah.
when it comes to the Mujahideen assassination, if you let that assassin die, just for those listening, like what happens?
Oh, for Majduddin, if you let the assassin die, what happens is your sync bar slowly starts desynchronizing, like incrementally, and Majduddin basically has this sort of like he completes his speech and he enters and he's at the center of the stage, and as his speech just finishes, basically the scene plays out that your sync bar depletes just as his speech finishes, so that it lines up nicely. What's funny though is, and you can attribute this to being a glitch in the animus, is because it's programmed that way, that like it doesn't instantly desync you, and they want to maintain the scene. If you interrupt him there and like start fighting him or assassinate him, it interrupts the degradation of your sync bar, and you can finish the mission. Actually, so technically, you can actually finish the mission, without like with the assassin dying, but it's obviously like not what happened. It's a glitch. Like the assassin died, and like the animus, I guess, like
It's
it's
doing its
obviously
best to
implemented
maintain
there.
the
Yeah,
simulation.
yeah,
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 it's really
yeah.
interesting.
It's doing its best. Yeah, and so to get back to like Nakul with his eavesdrop, like that's the whole wine thing, and that gives you an insight to his character. But what's more is like it like surprises you with the fact that guess what, the wine's there to poison everyone, right? You don't expect the party to be what it is, right? And you have all these sorts of things. This is why I've always said that like Assassin's Creed's investigations are kind of like the equivalent to Assassin's Creed, like what System Shock's audio logs are, like audio diaries, because the audio diaries are kind of like a means of like giving you information that encourage exploration and understanding of like certain things in the level design, whilst also giving you information and lore. The one thing though is that audio diaries and something like, well, actually, in System Shock, I'd say they're really useful and mandatory. But in something like Bioshock, they're kind of completely optional. And like, these audio diaries you can listen to while the game's playing on. Though I guess the System Shock actually manages better to like have you properly step back and listen. AC1 obviously can't afford anything like that. It wants you to like learn through its people dynamically and stuff like that. So this is how it works. I think that for AC1, it works really well, but I would have liked to see it probably refined by incorporating stuff that Brotherhood does, where like in Brotherhood, when you blend with some NPCs, and now granted, I don't want Ezio trilogy blending in AC1, but basically when you blend, what I would like to see as a feature borrowed but reimagined for AC1 is in Brotherhood, when you blend with NPCs, they start talking about the political climate of Rome, and it's actually influenced by how much you like basically liberated Rome or not. Like it changed, like if it's under Borgia, like under the rule of the Borgia, they're bitching about the Borgia and their legislations. Whereas like where if you liberate them, it's much better and stuff like that. I think it would be interesting if you could like dynamically interweave that as like part of the storytelling as well into AC1. Though AC1 has like a lot of other things going for it, for environmental and interactive storytelling that are like way higher highs for the series. So you have this sort of thing, right, with the investigations, and they have to be systemic because they're like this means of informing you on what's the nature of things are. As such, for the systems and mechanics that AC1 had during the time, I think that this was the best they could do, and you can see that like when they try and add variety in the like PC version, the game is not designed to go beyond that, right? And that's why like they have like these really really bad investigations. And so I think that like when we get the remake talk, when we look at investigations and variety, first of all, they shouldn't be too varied because they should be quick and easy to do. The real meat of the investigation should be the player investigating the world directly, but also they should be tied to whatever systemic mechanics you have available during the time. So like an AC1 remake, if it comes out, its tech will be more advanced. I'm sure Altair will be able to do more things. Maybe you can make investigations around that sort of concept. That's why I actually when I saw Mirage, I felt like it kind of like I haven't played Mirage, but like I saw like oh, we're doing the investigation thing again, and I'm like, I'm sure like tech has like evolved so much further that like that you don't need to do investigations the same way that AC1 is doing it, right? Like correct me if I'm wrong, it mostly does it the same way that AC1 is doing it, or does it like innovate on investigations?
It basically just makes them their own like AC2 style side quests, so it doesn't really do either one of those things to my knowledge. I mean, it has like the investigation board from games like Odyssey and Valhalla, but when it comes down to it, the way you're uncovering this information is you go to a location, you do like a bespoke side quest with its own cutscenes and mission objectives where it's like steal these things or assassinate these things, but it doesn't feel like it's any kind of systemic gameplay loop by any means. I'm honestly a little bit like
Right.
disappointed in them because yeah, no, I wouldn't say it even approaches anything close to AC1 style. It doesn't even feel like you're doing investigating, really. It just feels like do a side quest to like, you know, in the narrative, like understand like what you need to do next, right? I don't know. It just feels like a linear video game, right? Like you do a thing, you get a cutscene, you do the next thing. It doesn't really feel like you're learning anything personally.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. And like that's kind of like what you need to really acknowledge when you do investigations in AC1. And like basically, so like that's what the devs need to think of. They need to think of like how we're using the investigation to gauge the player towards understanding the world and stuff like that. And this is why I say that, like, even though you're doing the as you've said in the past, you're doing the day job of Altair and AC1. I don't really attribute that like with what a lot of players say, where like people who defend AC1, they say like it's a game that's boring on purpose. I don't really think that's the case. The thing is, like, it's only boring if you're looking at it on the surface level, because you're not learning about the world design. But like the thing is, when you recognize that these investigations are getting you to gauge with the world design and understand it, like to gauge with the actual unique part of the game, and you see it, you're like, okay, this is what it's getting me to do. It's good that this is minimalistic, so that those other parts of the game can shine, because this isn't the meat of the game. This is a tool to reinforce the meat of the game, basically, right? That's where the game really shines. And again, like, if you're not putting your heart into it, like, you kind of rob yourself of the fun, and like also you kind of like rob yourself of being able to optimize and understand the world. The place that I would actually add variety to is the Save Citizen missions, because like, I'm not saying that they're currently flawed or anything. Like, what they do, they work as intended and everything, but I think that's like a place you could expand upon them and make them more specific to specific city districts and the assassination target and how they're affecting the area. I think you can actually tie more narratives to Save Citizen missions. Right now, they're too generalized. Even though mechanically they work completely fine, you're not meant to do all of them, just the ones that you need to do for your mission, like for your assassination plan. But I think you can do more with it, and we're going to talk about that in AC1 remake talk. But um, so now for the embracing the illusion thing, I was kind of inspired by this with after a conversation with my friend Animus Drifter. Basically, he's an awesome guy. Shout out to Animus Drifter. I just want to say, like, as
Yeah,
so
he's
he and I
great.
have some opposing opinions. Yeah, he and I have some opposing opinions on AC1, and he raised an argument that I respect, which is why I'm bringing it up, because I respect it so much that I actually, even though I disagree with it, I kind of want to challenge it, and I kind of want to like talk about this, because I want to go deep into some ideas about AC1 that I may not like, because it made me realize I haven't necessarily talked about a certain part of AC1. Um, and I just bring it up because I respect his argumentation so much. Please, like, the listeners, keep in mind that I'm taking my friend's argument and I'm talking about it without him here, so he can't counter argue and stuff like that. So take everything I'm saying with a pinch of salt, and give his sort of thing some credence. He's like an awesome guy. I really respect him. Shout out to Animus Drifter. I'm just raising this because it's like actually a point of discussion that I want to bring up. So about embracing the illusion, something that Drifter kind of raised is like, he thinks that a flaw in Assassin's Creed is like in its investigative phase, kind of like working the way it does, where he doesn't want the game to have like this split investigative phase and this assassination phase, in the sense that, like, where it's so distinct, where like um how I said, like, the investigative phase is you really learning and learning and learning, and then the assassination phase is suddenly all hardcore. You can die in one hit, and it's like, oh wow, see if everything you learn comes into practice and like plays out well, right? He was of the opinion of making it something more gradiented, and basically through this, I think he's also not for the one hit death difficulty, and he's basically like, he and even Jacers, I think, both agree on this. And again, shout out to Jacers, like, both of them wonderful people. I'm just bringing this up to give my 2 cents on this. They kind of like propose the idea that you have a kind of like something that's enforced, is the game kind of like balancing its difficulty, like, where kind of like, you have this middle ground, where when you're doing like these high profile activities in the map and stuff like that, like, let's say parkouring around, guards can spot you doing that, and eventually they will aggro on you. At least that's what I think. Like, I remember like Jacers was like sort of proposing to say like idea. Basically, it's like the idea that like the game sort of has more of that contextual reaction with Altair in the game, so that like you can guide the player towards the intended way to experience the game, but not just in the intended way of experiencing the game, but also so that you can be more synchronous with Altair. Because what Drifter was proposing was that my notion of the fact that, like, when you're doing something like fucking around in the investigative phase to learn and probing the game, those are that's probably not how Altair went about learning the game, right? He kind of probably just saw stuff and he does his assassination, right? So the thing is that the game funnels you into just playing like that. Now, I respect this idea, and I actually think this would be a really cool idea for an Assassin's Creed game. And also, again, I hope I understood what he was saying right. I think this raises the one thing I wanted to take away from this is because I felt that I want to expand on why the investigative phase being the way it is so significant, and also why the game kind of embraces this like sort of like how it successfully embraces this gray zone in like what we're playing and the animus and stuff like that. So basically, the thing is that the way the game is framed is as such that the player has the option to sort of align themselves with Lucy or Vidic's sort of, beliefs in the game. Like, Lucy is sort of the advocate of patience and Vidic is the advocate of impatience, right? And then with the game's framing of like what's simulated, like what you're playing, is that you get to play this sort of gray area of what is real and what isn't real, essentially. This is important because this is how you get the player to be able to experiment and try out like any sort of assassination route that they want. Because the thing is, through having this middle ground where you're maybe not necessarily doing exactly what Altair is doing, but like, you have this leeway of what the animus is permitting you to do in the simulation of reliving Altair's life. And once again, we had the whole context that AC1 doesn't want the player to. It contextualizes the fact that a lot of stuff you see isn't what's happening for its own narrative, that you can't trust everything you see, right? With this in mind, the player has the chance to like lab any route that they want and then make any route actually possible. Because if you have enemies actually reacting to you constantly and dynamically, this once again could add pressure as such that the player will not try certain routes, right? Like, what if they like want to lab around this specific area, and to do it, they have to do like this parkour route that starts from the ground and goes to the rooftop, right? Like they're practicing where to side eject and not, right? But if the guard, like if you do too much and they're practicing this bit and then the guard spots you and starts chasing you, you're gonna be discouraged from doing that at all. But AC1, it's a game where about making any plan you want and then having the game react around you, essentially. And with the sort of system where the game tests you in that hardcore mode, it sort of validates the player prepping for any situation and then challenging any situation rather than interrupting the moment where they're prepping per se.
I
And
see.
in terms of the artistic framework lining up with the game is because of the fact that like I said, not being punished for basically doing what Altair is doing, and you're rushing through the game and not being patient and stuff like that, and you're rushing through it and aligning, like let's say with Vidic's um view on like his impatient view, and you rush through the game. He thinks that the game should actively punish you because like rushing through the game will cause the animus effects that like psychologically harm Desmond and stuff like that. Like that's what he feels basically, and you should feel the impact of death. And I think this is really an interesting topic of conversation. Uh, I disagree though. Like I think that basically the thing is that it's not simply rushing uh through things that like it's not rushing alone that triggered the congested memory we see in the opening of Assassin's Creed 1. It's a mix of that and also the fact that Desmond isn't given the time to give context to anything he sees to differentiate any of that. Like as far as the story's narrative progression goes, it puts you in a safe spot that you'd never have to face Desmond crashing out like the previous 16 subjects. In fact, that's why Lucy is there, to make sure that never happens. And the game puts you in the framework so that you don't have to experience that, because and instead the context for why he doesn't like even if you play as a player who doesn't participate in the game and you go with Vidic stand, you just go to the very end, is that the reason why he's able to discern his memories is because now all of a sudden the player's been to all those places that they can discern that glitched memory. If you actually pay attention to the glitched memory, you'll actually see that there's a bunch of architecture throughout the game like congested together. Like you'll find in the middle of the place like the fountain at Nakut's place. You'll find like the entrance to Ayub my mosque and stuff like that, and like you'll find like the Church of the Holy Sepulchre and all that stuff. Like you'll find those assets like rearranged and jumbled and mixed together because they're all like congested. So like just simply going through the campaign, even if you're not engaging with it, like it does manage to successfully have Desmond synchronize enough for what the plot actually propels. But what it doesn't succeed at is giving you the context to understand like everything in the game and how it works, right? That is only something that players who engage with the game will do. So I think that the framework that the game actually has right now is that like it's actually really successful, because the rushed player will still lose that information and will still like cheat themselves out of the experience, which is like the unique field state for AC1 that harmonizes with its concepts. And simultaneously the game designs sort of nature is as such that if you don't like that, you players are given the opportunity to prepare for any form of scenario, to have the game challenge basically, rather than having their like the types of plans they want to do interrupted basically. So that's kind of my argument.